Hello and welcome to the Pittsburgh City Council budget hearings. I am Councilman Kahari Mosley and I chair the Committee on Intergovernmental and Educational Affairs. For this hearing, we will hear from the Urban Redevelopment Authority and the Housing Opportunity Fund. I'd like to invite those from the URA to join us at the table. And while they are joining us at the table, I ask our Budget Director, Peter McDevitt, to give a brief overview of the department. And I also would like to acknowledge that Councilman Bobby Wilson is here as well.
Thank you, Councilman. The Urban Redevelopment Authority of Pittsburgh is the city of Pittsburgh's economic development enterprise, committed to fostering prosperity across all of Pittsburgh. The URA is committed to helping to bridge public and private interests to invest in meaningful, equitable developments that promote housing affordability, economic mobility, entrepreneurship, and neighborhood revitalization. The URA's work creates and sustains quality jobs, thriving neighborhoods, healthy communities, and sustainable businesses for the benefit of all of Pittsburgh. The URA includes 4 high-level functional units: the Central Operations, Development Services, Lending and Investments, and Business Solutions. And of note, Councilman Lavelle is Council's representative on the URA board. In the operating budget, the city does receive a little over $522,000 from the authority as intergovernmental revenue. That is for the debt service payments for 412 Boulevard of the Allied building. And also OMB operating, there's $20,000 for administrative services for the RACP awards. There are a number of capital budget deliverables that go straight to the URA. And there is also the Housing Opportunity Fund, and that is outlined their annual action plan, which I believe was at the table today at council and held. Yes, yep. I was paying attention. And that is all I have.
Thank you, Director McDevitt. I also want to acknowledge that my esteemed colleague, Councilwoman Barbara Warwick, has joined us as well. And now I invite the representatives from the Urban Redevelopment Authority to introduce yourselves, including your title.
Thank you, Councilman. My name is Sushila Nimani Stanger. I'm the Executive Director of the URA.
David Geiger, Director of Government and Strategic Affairs.
Damara Carter, the Chief Financial Officer at the URA.
Thank you for coming today. And Director Nimani Stanger, open it up for you to give a presentation.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon. It's nice to see everyone. On behalf of the URA staff and its board of directors, we appreciate the opportunity to meet with you all for our 2025 capital budget request. For the next 30 minutes, my colleagues and I will provide additional context about our ask. I have 2 colleagues with me in person today and a myriad on Zoom. Our ask reflects our long-standing commitment to making Pittsburgh a place where its residents, businesses, and communities thrive. In this year's ask, we commit to the City of Pittsburgh's priorities by investing in housing, small businesses, communities, and infrastructure. We emphasize programs and projects that respond to community needs, create reliable infrastructure, and connect people, places, and communities with opportunity for growth and development. On the housing front, we prioritize critical communities like Bedford Choice, homeownership opportunities at affordable and workforce housing levels. On the small business front, we prioritize commercial corridor investment, small business lending for businesses in avenues of hope, and critical assistance to small businesses who still face post-pandemic challenges. On the community front, our investments empower communities to enhance their surroundings through neighborhood-scale placemaking projects. And on the infrastructure and real estate fronts, we continue our investment in the land care program and increase our efforts to return vacant land to the tax rolls and seek to be good stewards of our vacant properties. As many of you know, we continue to operate our 5 affiliates at the URA. That really helps us round out our investment and community development capacity within the city of Pittsburgh. We truly believe these investments will lead to a thriving Pittsburgh. And with that, I'll turn it over to my colleague, David Geiger.
Thank you, Director. Next slide. Peter already went over this kindly for us, so we can go on to the next slide as well. That is our mission and vision again. As Shushila mentioned, I think it's important to always remind folks that while we talk about the URA drives our work forward and supports multiple affiliates. And so when we say URA, we're often talking about URA staff and our affiliate organizations, the boards that help support those affiliates and drive all of our work forward. Now for our impact, an overview of our impact in 2024. We'll have directors walk through slides that give a brief overview that shows impact through Q3 2024. We obviously don't have Q4 numbers completed yet. And with that, I will hand it over to my colleague, Chief Housing Officer Kiana Wassler.
Thank you, David. Again, I'm Kiana Wassler, Chief Housing Officer of the URA, and I'm excited to discuss the URA's housing offerings. The URA's Residential and Consumer Lending Department provides affordable housing services for homeowners, future homeowners, tenants, and all City of Pittsburgh residents. We also assist residential developers with gap financing for small and large-scale new rental and construction, or the rehabilitation of rental or for-sale housing. URA-supported housing developments transform neighborhoods, protect affordability for Pittsburgh residents, and also enhances the value of our communities. In the first 3 quarters of 2024, our investment in affordable housing surpassed $14 million, leading to the creation or preservation of 344 rental and for-sale units and assisting 112 residents in purchasing homes. We also supported 82 low to moderate income homeowners with necessary repairs, with 78% of all recipients of our housing funding being minority and or women heads of households. The housing investments made so far in Q1 through Q3 2024 have surpassed the total housing investment of 2023. This is a representation of successful public-private partnerships coming together to meet the needs of the community. Additional programs such as the Housing Stabilization and Legal Assistance Program address housing crisis, while our Home Accessibility Program allows seniors to age in place. The increase in investments for crisis prevention services, home repair, and the creation of new affordable units highlights the ongoing need for affordable housing support in Pittsburgh's housing ecosystem. I now will turn it over to our Chief Development Officer, Tom Link, to discuss development activities.
Very much, Chief Wassler. Hi, everyone. I'm Chief Development Officer here at the URA, Tom Link. Thank you, as always, to our partners and colleagues at City Council. Thank you to my friends at the URA sitting at the table. Just briefly, this is a slide. This is on our website, the URA's website. We have quarterly our sort of current development project outlook, as of now, Q3 2024. The takeaway of this slide is that we have an extraordinarily robust pipeline of projects that we are working on a daily basis that essentially are moving, fallow, underutilized, public land, largely our land, and moving it through our board process to productive use, to do good things for our city, good things for our community, create housing, create jobs, increase our tax base. You can see the total numbers here. The realm of uses across our projects are everything from mixed use and commercial, residential, and even green space and public realm investments that we're involved with. I think another thing, just for the public and for the council, for City Council to be aware of, and I know that you are, but just to reiterate here, it's sort of for the record. There's about $2.2 billion in total project costs through the full of these projects that we are working on. The vast majority of that, is leveraged monies, right? So, the URA is, part of our role in development is as projects come to fruition from a financing perspective, our investment, the investment that we make gets matched many private financing and other public financing at the state and federal level. At least 5-6 times generally, but oftentimes more like 10 times, even 20 times. Leverage on individual projects. And I'll also note, but does not include the work that we do to place public financing. Again, other public financing, state and federal funding, in addition to private funding, in individual projects that are important for our community and important for our city. And an example of that would be over the last several weeks, the announcement around our downtown investment strategy and the work that we did in partnership with the Commonwealth and certainly Council and our friends of the city to bring additional resources to downtown Pittsburgh to help move important office to housing conversion projects from idea to fruition over the next several months, which is a big part of our work. So again, just wanted to bring highlight to this, and thank you so much for your consideration, and I'll turn the slides back over to the rest of my team. Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sienna Kane, Assistant Director of the Commercial and Business Lending Department at the URA. As a brief overview, the Commercial Lending Department provides flexible financing options for our startup and existing businesses in the city. Alongside our Community Development Financial Institution, or CDFI, Invest Pittsburgh, we offer loan products that range from $5,000 to $500,000 with rates below market and terms to match project and borrowers' needs. As you can see on this slide, our commercial lending unit primarily invests in women and minority-owned businesses, and we offer specialty products for minority-owned businesses, childcare businesses in the city, and small contractors. This year, we're on track this year, and on average, we close about 70 small business loans annually, deploying between $5 and $6 million into the local economy. We aim to work with entrepreneurs that may have trouble accessing traditional sources of financing, such as first-time businesses, those with insufficient collateral, and those working to build or repair their credit history. Another important aspect of our work highlighted here is sharing social capital with our clients in the small business community of Pittsburgh. Through partnerships with Chatham Center for Women's Entrepreneurship and Neighborhood Allies, to name a few, we offer free technical assistance or business counseling to support nascent and growing businesses regardless of their use of our loan products. Business counseling can range from assistance with planning and projections, marketing expertise, or for capital stack development. The work of our commercial lending department is critical to the URA mission. Investing in the small business community helps to build equitable, vibrant neighborhoods, creates opportunities for our residents to build generational wealth, provides access to capital and local quality jobs, and brings vitality to our neighborhood business districts. Thanks so much and for hearing from us this afternoon, and I'll pass it back to Director Geiger.
Thank you, Sienna. In addition to the impact that the URA has had across those areas, as you're all well aware, the URA has an allocation of nearly $70 million in American Rescue Plan Act funding from the city of Pittsburgh. This funding is not discretionary and must be used for the specific purposes included in the ARPA budget approved by council and the mayor. And it also must fit with federal ARPA guidelines, which can be difficult to comply with. We're, however, proud to report that we have agreements signed with the city of Pittsburgh for each line item which meets the federal definition of obligated by the end of 2024. Further, we've committed through our board processes nearly all $70 million of that funding and spent $42.3 million of it, which is just over 60% of the funding. We are confident that we will spend this funding fully by the deadline. The impact of the one-time stimulus funding cannot be overstated. 160 first-time homeowners through Own PGH, including attracting 77 new residents to the city of Pittsburgh, assisting 88 businesses to create 322 additional outdoor seating options, providing the final funding needed for Hayes Woods, which allowed us to dedicate 641 acres of new parkland to the city of Pittsburgh, enabled us to complete the Penn Circle two-way conversion and streetscape improvements earlier this year, provided first money in for the Pittsburgh Downtown Conversion Program, a pilot program that proved concept viability and eventually led to Governor Shapiro's $600 million downtown investment announcement this fall. These are just some of the highlights of the impact we've made with ARPA funding and demonstrate the ability of the URA to deliver for the city of Pittsburgh when we receive these critical investments from the city. Now that we've had a chance to discuss our impact in 2024, a brief overview of the URA capital budget line items included for 2025. We know that 2025 is a lean year for the city of Pittsburgh, and the modest $8.8 million included for the URA in the mayor's proposed budget is a reflection of that reality. The chart here does not include items funded through the operating budget, which contains $10 million for the Housing Opportunity Fund and $2.5 million for housing bond repayments. We will discuss both of these items later in the presentation. While not far from the average total investment we've seen in recent years, with a majority of CDBG funding going towards federal choice neighborhood commitments, the city and the URA have already made to HUD. It leaves very little to pay for other core work. With the coming expiration of the ARPA dollars that we just discussed, we need to find solutions to a trend of overall declines in funding budgeted for commercial lending, blight remediation, and development activities. This is not just a local problem and is exacerbated by cuts at the state and federal levels. My colleagues will now go into further detail on each of the proposed line items included in the mayor's proposed 2025 budget. And with that, I'll hand it back over to my colleague, Chief Housing Officer Kiana Wassler.
Thanks, David. We'll get started in the housing section by discussing our affordable rental request. Affordable rental development financing is provided to nonprofit and for-profit developers through the URA's Rental Gap program. This program provides financing that creates and preserves affordable rental units through low-income housing tax credit, or otherwise known as LIHTC developments, and non-LIHTC developments. We are requesting $1.95 million in home funding and $300,000 in CDBG funds, for a total request of $2,295,569 in affordable rental funding. This will create or preserve at least 90 affordable housing rental units. A good example of a recently completed development that used this funding is Cedarwood Homes development in Ferrywood neighborhood, is represented in the photos of the slide. This development utilized affordable rental funding to create 46 affordable housing units for seniors age 62 or older. There are many additional projects in our pipeline for this funding, including phase 2 of Bedford Dwellings, several developments in the Homewood neighborhood, Hazelwood neighborhoods, and many other neighborhoods across the city of Pittsburgh. Next, we'll go into our affordable for sale development request. We have a request to the city for $300,000 in CDBG funding to support the URA's for sale development program. This program offers grants and loans to nonprofit developers for the rehabilitation or construction of new housing units intended to be for sale as the end use. At completion of these projects, the homes will be available to buyers whose incomes are at or below 80% of the area median income, or AMI. We estimate that this funding, if provided by the city, will help create approximately 3 affordable for sale housing units across the city. The city of Pittsburgh also provides revenue to the URA for the Housing Opportunity Fund. The Housing Opportunity Fund, or HOF, as it's known to be called, is the City of Pittsburgh's Affordable Housing Trust Fund, and it plays a pivotal role in Pittsburgh's affordable housing landscape. Each year, the HOF Advisory Board drafts an allocation plan and represents it to the City Council for approval as required through their legislation process. The 2025 draft plan is as shown on the slide and includes some changes from the prior year, such as an increase in funding for the Housing Stabilization Program, which is our program that supports keeping people in their homes, making sure they're not being evicted, and then a decrease in the Legal Assistance Program, which is a program that also supports that same effort, but by providing legal lawyers or mediation to folks who are being evicted or foreclosed on. And this change is due to successful fundraising efforts that the Legal Assistance Program team has garnered from other sources. Additionally, no funding is allocated to the Small Landlord Fund program for 2025 due to a slow program ramp up and some funds still being available in that line item. The changes for 2025 have been made by the advisory board. The allocation has been made by the advisory board after careful consideration of all of the program's performance and funding availability. The allocation plan, as mentioned earlier, legislation was submitted and introduced to council. I believe it will be further discussed in detail in City Standing Committee next week. And then lastly, the city has also provided significant support to the URA through our affordable housing bond issuance. In December of 2023, the URA completed its affordable housing bond issuance. Many thanks to the support of the City of Pittsburgh, the Mayor's Office, City Council. With this issuance, we were able to raise $30.6 million to further support affordable housing efforts. The plan is to spend 50 to 80% of these funds in our rental development programs, 10 to 15% of funds in our for sale programs, and we have allowed ourselves the option to create a construction bridge loan program with approximately 15 to 30% of the funds if needed. The URA is on track to meet our goal of preserving and creating 1,000 rental and for sale units for residents at 80% AMI or below in the first 3 years of the fund. Of that $30.6 million in bond funds, approximately $3.3 million is committed to projects, with many projects in the pipeline across the city, including several downtown, and in other neighborhoods. Some of our downtown projects that you see on the screen have also won RCAP awards from the state, further advancing the way these funds can leverage other funds and helping advance our downtown efforts. On behalf of the housing staff of the URA, I want to take a moment to thank the members of City Council for your continued support of affordable housing, as well as your consideration of the 2025 housing development budget. Funding from the city is critical to our ability to run our programs. It's also critical to our ability to leverage additional funds from the state and other sources. And with that, I will conclude the housing presentation and pass it over to Brandon Wilson to discuss Bedford Dwellings Choice Neighborhood Initiatives.
Good afternoon. My name is Brandon Wilson, and I am a senior project manager for the URA, and I'm here to discuss the URA's Bedford Choice projects. In July of 2023, the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development awarded a Choice Neighborhoods implementation grant to the city of Pittsburgh for $50 million. The Choice Grant's purpose is to rebuild Bedford Dwellings, the oldest public housing in Pittsburgh, and leverage this redevelopment to transform the neighborhood. The plan is broken into 3 components: housing, neighborhood, and people. I'll be addressing the first 2 of these components today. The housing plan will create 823 new rental units in the Hill District over 7 phases. 2 of these phases, City's Edge and Reed Roberts, have already begun construction and will produce 223 rental units, with 191 of those units being affordable at 80% AMI or below. Last year, the city fulfilled its commitment for $5 million in CDBG housing leverage for Francis Street, which is in the process of closing and will create 180 units, 147 of which are affordable at or below 80% AMI. This year, we are requesting $5 million in CDBG leverage for Bedford Phase 3 on Summers Drive. This will be a 70 rental unit housing development with 37 of those units at or below 80% affordability. Next slide, please. The neighborhood component of the Choice Plan consists of 4 URA-led neighborhood improvements that address the built environment of the neighborhood in an effort to supplement the new rental housing. These projects are called Critical Community Improvements, or CCIs. The URA is requesting funding for 2 of these CCIs today. First is a request for $175,000 for our facade repair and renovation CCI. This will be an application-based program for Hill District homeowners within the Choice boundary to get up to $50,000 in facade grants and home rehabilitation money. We anticipate repairing up to 4 facades with this funding, with the first priority area being housing on the 2700 block of Bedford Avenue. The second request is for CCI leverage for $100,000 for street level activation. This is the commercial development component of Bedford Choice. The funding will be primarily targeted toward the ground level commercial space that will be rehabilitated on Center Avenue and that will be newly constructed on Heron Avenue as part of Bedford Phase 4. While these projects are still in the design process, it is estimated that anywhere from 2 to 4 businesses could be served through this commercial space. With that, I will hand the presentation back to Tom Link.
Great, thanks, Brandon. You can go to the next slide. Yeah, the next line item in the request is $500,000. Again, this is Tom Link. I'm Chief Development Officer at URA. Thanks again. Next line item is $500,000 in PAYGO monies in the capital budget request to support gap financing for neighborhood commercial real estate development. The slide here shows that could support up to 4 projects. I think realistically, it's probably more like 2 or 3 that could be projects across the city of Pittsburgh. I think the key components here is these are monies as sort of gap fill, almost last money in for mixed use and commercial real estate development in our neighborhood business districts, direct financing to development that requires match. I would say on average, on a project basis, these monies would leverage at least 3 to 5 times the amount in private and other public financing investment to complete development projects across our city at a neighborhood scale. You can go to the next slide. There's an example of where we've been able to deploy this money in the past. Allowed directly toward the Hill District as an example of previous use of this type of money. Moving forward, thinking about our current plan, this is just for illustrative purposes, an example, types of current projects we are working on across the city that could benefit from this type of financing. And certainly as our pipeline evolves and grows over the next several months, this could change and where projects that are ready to move and receive investment and then the timing of that investment could change. But the spirit here is these monies go towards, neighborhood scale projects to fill financing gaps. These would be largely substantial rehabilitation projects versus new construction, although it doesn't prohibit new construction. Where it would be new construction would certainly be infill type development within our neighborhood business districts, and would run through programs that we have here at the URA to support development of this kind. I will leave it there and move on to the next slide. So thank you very much.
Hello, I'm Damara Carter, the CFO at the URA. The URA staff members are critical to complete the diverse work in affordable housing, commercial, small business, and development across all areas of the city. This funding will ensure that the URA can continue to deliver the work that you heard about today. The URA has almost 100 employees. The $500,000 of PAYGO dollars will help an estimated 6.5 employees to accomplish this work. 2 from residential development, 2 from housing, 2 from commercial, and an operations support staff. Thank you.
Thank you for that presentation. Before we open it up for questions, I do want to acknowledge that we've now been joined by Councilperson Strasburger, Councilperson Charlin, as well as Councilperson Gross and Council President Lavelle. And based on order of appearance, we'll start off with Councilman Bobby Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thanks for being here. Great presentation. Your presentation always is very lengthy, but that was pretty, you start us off by warning us, you will now sit through a 30-minute presentation. But that was pretty good. It was pretty succinct, and appreciate you going over all that information. I really just have some questions on numbers and funds now and in the future, and just some basic revenue questions. Okay, so I see here the total is $10 million allocated here for 2025 from the city.
$10 million for the Housing Opportunity Fund.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I was trying to add. So this one would be less than that.
So there's
obviously $10 million from the Housing Opportunity Fund. Yeah. So I'm looking at. So if I add all these up, I don't know, Peter. These are all the city funds.
8.8.
Okay, so 8.8. And then how much ARPA do you still have left?
So as we discussed earlier, all 70 million of it has been put under contract with the city of Pittsburgh and meets that federal obligation deadline at the end of 2024. Further, nearly all 70 million of it has been committed by our board to an external party through either a program or a capital project, and 42.3 million of that has actually been spent. Checks have been cut, so that's about 60% of the funding. So there's about 40% that has essentially been committed that will be spent down over the course of the next year.
Okay, and the 8.8 million was allocated this year. What is it out in years 26, 27? How much is that going down?
I don't believe I have the 5-year plan in front of me. I defer to our council budget officer if he has that.
Hold, please.
Well, I imagine you're aware of it at some point, but how would that affect you?
Without knowing what's in the 5-year plan, I can't speak to it directly.
In 2026, there's projected 8.2 million to the URA. In 27, it's about 7.8 million.
So I wouldn't want to speak too speculatively because I do think it's very important to understand the financial position of the authority and the city overall by the time we're all sitting here next year. But I think it, refers back to what I mentioned when I was giving an overview of the funding allocated this year, assuming that it is roughly the same next year. As we've said, with the expiration of ARPA funding and with cuts in state and federal programs, as well as the city's commitment to choice funding, which takes up a good portion of the CDBG funding for the next few years. We really do need to, at least in my opinion, I think my colleagues share this, need to find solutions to overall declines in funding budgeted for things like commercial lending, blight remediation, and other core development activities. And I think the levels of investment and where that investment is placed is certainly up for thoughtful discussion with you, your colleagues, the mayor's office. But I'll defer to Shushila if she has additional thoughts, but it is something that concerns us.
Yes, we're always thinking about our budget and the tightness of the budget. And Damara, our CFO, and I are going to be drafting a 5-year budget starting in January from now on.
It's kind of my point here.
Is it? Okay. Okay.
The 5-year, you all must be aware
Yeah.
of that. Like we're thinking about that as well on the city side. And So I thought I interrupted. No. So I was just furthermore on that, with, funds being obviously pretty tight here, and then looking out in 5 years, the Urban Redevelopment Authority, how do you see your role in trying to maintain the level of taxes that we get in here, or trying to create new revitalization efforts, whether it's the downtown area or, elsewhere in the city, so that we can, get more money back on the tax rolls, so you can help us, reestablish ourselves as, a city that's gonna, we don't have that once ARPA, we're done spending the ARPA money that we have, that's filling a big void. Once that's over, that goes away for you all, which I'm curious, like how much ARPA money do you spend on staff?
Do you want us to answer?
Yeah, because you could tie that into that because that's kind of my.
Let's answer
It's
that
one of
second.
the. It's one of the
Yeah.
questions I had, but
Okay.
it was just a fleeting thought there when I was going for and completing my thought about this question, which is just how do you, how do you see yourselves at the URA?
Yeah.
Trying to create an environment where the city's not going broke.
So the URA has always been an authority that has been very flexible in nature, and that we can quickly adapt to the needs of the region and the city. And so we have a lot of creative staff, a lot of staff that are willing to attempt and fundraise in very creative ways. We don't do anything alone. We have really strong partners in the private sector, in the public sector, nonprofits, and it's critical that we have priorities, that we communicate continually to our partners so that we're all working toward the same thing. And I think downtown was a really good example of that work. There's no way that any single organization could have moved a downtown investment plan forward alone, right? It took a very strong collective effort with particular goals in mind, related to stabilizing the tax base, making downtown clean and green, looking for funding and continually looking for funding from new sources that allow for us to unlock and adaptively reuse office and turn them into residential. And I mean, frankly, we've talked about this a lot, is the conversion of office to residential is a really important opportunity for us. We know that we have housing needs. We know that we need to produce and preserve housing units. And so the office vacancies do present an opportunity for us to do that. The long game, the URA, I mean, we really do think about the long game. We do have, as you've seen, we have a lot of programs that can fill immediate and critical needs, but we really think long term. Yeah, which is why it makes a lot of sense for us to forecast our budget on a 5-year plan, just like the city. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I was
Okay.
just getting, I mean,
Okay.
a lot of
Yeah.
this is, rightly so. There's a lot of, in the presentation, a lot of about affordable housing, which is critically important. But I was just curious on, the URA does a lot more, and you touched on that. I was just wondering,
Yeah, we do.
what the future goals are of the URA for,
Yeah.
maintaining and increasing our tax base.
I think continuing to be a reliable partner is really important for us. As Tom Link noted, the investments that we make are we leverage roughly 6 to 10 times that in an overall project or an initiative. And I think that that's critically important. I mean, just looking at Manchester and the opportunity to work with the community to reconnect Manchester and Chateau is a really great opportunity right now. And, we're looking at one particular geography, but we really see that corridor as a corridor of opportunity in the 5 to 7 year term. And so, this is just one step in a longer series of goals to unlock underutilized property and turn them into taxable property, because that is part of our mission. Our mission is to advance inclusive growth throughout the city, and under that is to create jobs, deliver on affordable housing, and to return underutilized blighted property to the tax rolls.
Okay. You mentioned conversion. How well do you think the conversion is going downtown?
I think we have a number of conversion candidates that have moved forward and that now have the funding to move forward. And I think that we needed that. We needed the state to come in and add their investment to it. Our next step, as you know, is the federal government. But you all started with the grassroots regional collective effort to allow for us to collectively unlock a tax abatement, to show that we have regional, that the revitalization of downtown is a regional priority.
Right.
And so we needed that in order to go to the state. Now that we've gone to the state, now that we go to the feds.
Yeah, it takes a whole collaboration of, entities. The, this conversion, and thank you for sharing recent information on that. how many projects have done or in the pipeline, completed or in the pipeline that wouldn't require any public subsidy, other than taking advantage of, let's say, like the LERTA program?
I don't have that information available to me, but can I get back to you on it?
Yeah,
Okay.
my question is more tailored on like, well, trying to understand more about this, and I think a real marker of success would be whenever, there isn't the governor coming in and saying, here is all this money towards this project to get this moving, that we have organically, we're seeing investors investing in conversions downtown and, slowly taking less of the public money and just doing it, just organically on their own.
I think a number of factors go into that. The inclusion of affordable housing, the 30% cost overruns post-COVID, the interest rate environment right now. So I will get back to you on it.
Yeah, you see where I'm going.
Yeah,
I'm just.
I do, yeah.
Do you agree with that at all? Do you think that that's
It's complicated.
a marker to look at, or?
I do. Yeah, I think. Yeah, I think that. I think that the interest in conversions downtown is a real marker, and I think that the renewed interest in people looking at properties to buy and convert is a real marker, and that's a positive thing.
Yeah. Okay, and then do you have the number on ARPA funding, ARPA allocation that was sent to the URA, and whether or not staff is relying on that allocation?
Yeah, I can get back to you with a specific number, but generally speaking, similar to the Housing Opportunity Fund, our contracts with the city of Pittsburgh allow the use of up to 10% of ARPA funding to pay for administrative and operating costs. There are also, as you're aware from the land bank, certain line items that really are meant to pay for operations and administration and staffing. So I don't have a specific number for you, but we can get back to you with one.
Yeah, I guess the question is, if it's up to 10%, then are you utilizing is that current staff that you had, or is that staff that you added on? You can get back to me.
Get back to you.
All right. And then I always have to make a plug for my district at some point, like every council member here is probably going to do. Trying to get some laughter. Doesn't work. It doesn't work all the time. The East Ohio Street, just, appreciate your efforts there. Just really want to figure out something for, the two properties. And then I realize there's another adjoining property that held by the community group, local CDC. So just, there's a whole list of things to talk about, and I keep, I just want to make sure that I just say that in this meeting, so I'm reminded, you're reminded, and I just want to, because I think that that's going to be critical for the north side moving forward. That's like probably number one priority for that main street. So really, that section there has gone. There's like a new daycare that's being built right there. There's been some investment. So I know we've had some interest in the past. It didn't work out. We had an RFP that didn't work out either. So just looking for the best path, for those properties. So that's it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councilman. Next in our queue is Councilperson Barbara Warwick.
Okay, thanks. Thanks for the thorough presentation. It's great. Just sort of on the topic of affordable housing, so in 2024, we being, the city, the URA together, put 14 million into affordable housing. I think that's what it said. Does that include the Housing Opportunity Fund? Yes. Okay. Okay, so 14 million, and then I'm looking, so it says 344 affordable units were created or preserved. And then we have 122 new homeowners. Yeah, through these programs.
112 is what's on the
112,
slide.
sorry, yeah, 112. And so with the ARPA funding, so we've spent 42 million of the 70. That's not just this year. That's not just this year, but yeah,
That
since
was not just this year. And the ARPA statistics and performance is actually not part of these standard reports. We have a separate impact tab on our impact page that shows ARPA performance.
so does the ARPA money, has that, so I see that there's 150 new homeowners. Are those affordable or units?
Yes, that number was from the OWN PGH program, which is an affordable housing
OWN
program.
PGH. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. And was the ARPA funding go into any rental assistance programs or?
Not rental assistance.
Or creation, I should say, of maybe rental units?
Yes, creation of rental units, certainly, but not the direct, resident rental payment efforts, like the human service payments.
Got it. Okay, and so the Housing Opportunity Fund, which is the 10 million a year that we put, that's among other things, housing crisis prevention, eviction prevention, and other legal services around that. And then for 2025, so these, and just so I'm clear, maybe Director McDevitt, so these numbers in here are what is allocated in the budget? Or it seemed like some of them were a little, your numbers were a little higher.
So they might be including like the matching funds because they're able to leverage the dollars that we supplied.
I'm tracking. Okay.
Yeah. So they have the 8.8 in capital funds that are outlined in the little overview I gave you, and then the $10 million for Housing Opportunity Fund.
Okay, so as it stands, like if the budget passed as is, the funds that you are asking for are in it?
The overview that we gave was the 8.8 million included in the mayor's budget proposal.
Okay.
In the capital budget. In the operating budget is where you find the 10 million operating transfer for the HOF.
Okay.
And the 2.5 million operating transfer for the affordable housing bond repayments.
Okay, I just wanted, because sometimes at the table there's sort of ask, it's like, oh, we don't have it, we'd like to get more type of thing. So okay. So for 2025, 2.3 million for affordable rentals. I'm seeing 300,000 for sale. And then of course 10 million for the Housing Opportunity Fund. Just a question. So with the affordable rental units that y'all support through the various projects. And I should say, my district is getting lots of great stuff in terms of affordable housing. So thank you so much for your work on that, both on 2nd Avenue at the Hazelwood Green, and there's one here. I see it's actually. Councilman Wilson got his picture in there because I was out of town. But that one's mine. That's my district. Yeah, just put my head in there. Just Photoshop it on top. Anyway, so for the rental, so whether it's rental assistance, eviction prevention, rental assistance, affordable rentals. What is the AMI range that for folks who you support there with those programs?
Kiana, are you available to answer that and make sure that we don't give in?
Sure.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
For rental developments, we are typically supporting AMI levels at 60% AMI and below. In the downtown neighborhood, we were able to go up to 80%, I believe, with the downtown conversion program. For affordable for sale, that is an AMI level of 80% AMI and below.
Okay. And that's for the, okay, so for the home ownership, 80%
Correct.
and below. Okay. Do you tend to get folks coming, you know, or sort of, just as sort of housing experts, do you tend to see, is that the area of most need, you would say, in terms of the AMI? And folks who are, you know, having trouble either paying their rent or finding a place that they can afford to rent?
The area of most need is going to be at the extremely low income level, which is at 30% AMI and below.
Okay.
And our AMI levels are set based on the funding sources that we have. HUD's funding, we do with CDBG and Home. HUD has a requirement of these affordability levels. We can't use their funding at levels beyond what we use it at now.
Got it. And with, you may not have this because I know that you work with a lot of third parties on some of this stuff and you guys sort of provide the funding, but do you have an idea? So when it comes to, for example, the eviction prevention, that type of thing, the kind of, what rough AMI levels do you see most? Is it mostly these people in the 30% or below? Oh.
I'll start, David, and then you can add. I think we would want to ask our partners to provide that data for you and provide that at a later date. But our programs do only support certain AMI levels, so I believe we will see a range of AMI from the levels of 80% down and below. I will say I've been talking to Action Housing, who runs our housing stabilization program for us, as well as the different providers of the legal assistance program, about are they seeing repeat offenders, folks who have gone through eviction processes repeatedly, or are these like first time issues? And what I heard from them is a lot of what they've been seeing in 2024 are first time folks who have maybe lost a job, lost a family member who was helping support the household, or some other medical life event that's affected their income. And so it's kind of put them in an income to be able to provide, or us to be able to provide resources to them in their emergency.
Okay. Thank you. And then I guess my last question would be, just with all the various housing providers that you work with and the various communities that you're working with, et cetera, you know, when in this issue of sort of the difficulty finding housing, do you get a lot of folks with concerns about the need for affordable housing for people who are 120% AMI?
We don't get a lot of that. Because I think it's probably known that our programs don't really meet those levels of need. I think, in areas such as the higher end neighborhoods, like Shady Side, downtown, we get some requests for that. But typically across the whole city, not necessarily.
Okay. That's all I wanted to ask. Thank you. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Turn the mic on. Thank you, Councilwoman. I believe next in the queue is my esteemed colleague from south of the river, Councilman Charlin.
Thank you. I don't know about how esteemed, but appreciate that. Really want to thank the URA for being here. Thank you all year round for all of the help you provide. One of the things that you don't refer to in your presentation that you do provide for me almost all the time is education. So I really do appreciate being able to sit down and, like yesterday with you, David, and walk through some of our housing policies and some of the things that we're looking at in the city here. Make sure that although a lot of us work with development, none of us are developers. So understanding kind of how these projects come and how a stack is assembled and getting that education that we wouldn't otherwise get is an unbelievable resource. And I'm blessed to have folks like you that are kind of always available for us. I don't have a whole lot of questions here in terms of the URA. I think there's some things that we're working on that I want to, continue plugging, such as the Main Street Manager project in Southside for East Carson Street, which, as you know, we've funded now, and we'll be able to hopefully change the economy of Southside in a short while here. So that's a major goal for me. I did have the only real question I had for you. There was something on, and I'm scrolling through sheets now because I can't find it. The Housing Opportunity Fund allocation here. There was something in there for demonstration dollars, and I was just curious if you could explain what that means. I just don't know the term.
Yeah, I'll turn that over to Kiana to explain the demonstration.
Thank you, David. The demonstration dollars are, it's a line item that allows funding to be allocated to a flexible source. So majority of the Housing Opportunity Fund dollars are going to programs that are already created and already kind of planned with many different providers providing services through those programs. The demonstration dollars, it just allows for a flexible line item where folks from, the public, nonprofit sector, any sector can come to us with a request for those funds for a housing specific project. In the past, demonstration dollars have been used mostly to supplement the other programs in the fund if they run out of funding throughout the year. But there have been some other uses of that line item, such as there was a housing development in the Hill District that was going through an emergency where they failed an inspection and needed an infusion of cash to help get them to the point where they could get to to pass the inspection. There was also an opportunity when there was a homeless shelter downtown before it closed. We were able to provide some funding to them to help keep them open for a bit longer. So it is a flexible source available to anyone who comes and requests it.
So is the intent of that this could be something we use for like an innovative new program to see how it works? Is that, which I understand might be something that we have to use as a stopgap somewhere else, but could be, let's figure out how this works. And if this is something we want to scale, we learn that with this amount of money.
Absolutely. We could definitely use it to pilot a new program. I know there's several different efforts that the mayor and city are considering for affordable housing. We could potentially pilot an effort. And we are planning in December at the Housing Opportunity Fund Advisory Board level to come up with a very streamlined process to be able to request these funds, for the public to request the funds. So yes, we would be happy to support pilot efforts through the demo dollars.
That's super cool. I'm really glad to hear that that's what that's being used for. I do want to acknowledge that you are going to be funded next year and just next year for URA personnel and small business development at $500,000 in each category next year. That money does not exist after next year. What are you going to do?
So I believe that is an accurate description of what's in the city's 5-year plan. I don't think, as I mentioned earlier, what's currently included in the plan looks all too different than what we've seen over the past, 4 to 5 years. I think because those are PAYGO funded line items as opposed to federal formula funds like CDBG and HOME, which you can see sort of projected outwards based on that formula. Those PAYGO lines do tend to disappear in the out years. However, I don't think we've seen them always disappear necessarily by the time we get there. So for example, if you see a PAYGO line item ending in 2027 this year, normally by next year it's projected out to at least 2028. So, we obviously want to continue to receive funding from the city of Pittsburgh to fund our priorities, and it would be of great concern if we got the sense that the city was no longer interested in funding the URA, especially things like personnel. But I continue to have confidence in the city's process, in the financial management that we've seen. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, I think from your perspective, it answers it. It doesn't answer it from the city's perspective of why we have a 5-year plan if we don't use it as a 5-year plan, when if the idea here is that we're going to fund you next year, and then we're not going to fund you in 2 years, but we're going to find a way to fund you in 2 years, but we can't make the accounting work on that. That's not a URA problem. That's a OMB problem. But, URA is not the only place where that happens. Has been historically one of the more obvious ones. So, I guess, and I'm sure Councilman Coghill will ask about this a lot, but I just want to know where we are in terms of the affordable housing bond. Can you give a status update?
Yeah, turn that over to Director Wassler. The short answer is we are making progress. Commitments have been made in the projects, but for specifics, I'll turn that over to Director Wassler.
Thank you. We have many projects in the pipeline, and the affordable housing bond is being used in programs that currently already exist at the URA. And so when we talk about our pipeline of rental developments, we are a lot of times infusing many different sources into each project. So there could be an overlay of bond plus CDBG in one project, if that makes sense. So we have many projects in the pipeline. In 2024, PHFA awarded the city of Pittsburgh 6 LIHTC awards. So that's all a part of our project pipeline. Most of the downtown awards that have recently been mentioned, in the media and here today are also considered to be part of the pipeline for the housing bond. We have $30.6 million that we secured through the bond efforts. And currently we have true commitments that have gone through our board process of only $3.3 million, but we expect that to ramp up significantly in 2025 as we've kind of completed the commitment and spend down of the ARPA funds and now need to tap into our other sources that are available.
Okay. And you said there's 6 LIHTCs. Is that 6 LIHTCs citywide, or did you say 6 downtown?
6 citywide.
6 citywide. Okay. And the affordable bond is paying for a local portion of the LIHTC?
Potentially. We haven't underwritten all of them yet completely, so potentially it could. Okay.
I'm very supportive of LIHTCs, and I'm very glad to hear that's happening. The LIHTC is I think the most effective way to create large numbers of affordable housing, and we should look at LIHTC policies for the rest of our affordable housing policies. I had another question, but unfortunately it fell out of my head here. So, yeah, it's in Councilman Coghill's hand. Thank you very much for being here, and I've got a couple things I'll follow up with, but they're personal questions and individual things. So, I appreciate taking the time.
Thank you.
Thank you for your questions, Councilman. Next in the queue is Councilwoman Gross.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Also, flipping through your very thorough presentation. So I think some other members have asked kind of the similar questions on impact. Because I think because we're all kind of thinking like, okay, so where are we now? So that we can kind of look in terms of where are we going next with the budget. And I'm trying in my brain to put together 2 different pages of funding streams that I think I've heard kind of like create housing, preserve housing. But I'm also looking at the next page, which is kind of keep people in their homes. So it wasn't funding for the structure, but it was funding for the people, right? And so when we look at the legal assistance and housing crisis prevention assistance, I mean, those are substantial numbers. That's another 1,500, 1,600 people that we didn't lose out of the city, right? So I try to constantly remind myself between, you know, the way we lost population between 2010 and 2020 was we lost our poorest people. Substantially of those were minorities because they just couldn't afford the rent. So keeping people rent stabilized in a way, or preventing their maybe not entirely legal eviction process that they may be subject to, is really important. And we've all kind of learned a lot about how significant that problem and that impact can be. So I'm kind of just trying to put this in my head together now, and I'm like looking out loud, trying to do math out loud in my into the microphone. So I've got 344 units created or preserved, and some of that was like, you know, the whole home repair match stuff. It's similar, but it's different.
It would be the HAP program that you see funded out of the Housing Opportunity Fund, which is very similar to whole homes.
Right. And we hear stories about, you know, seniors who maybe had a leaky roof and they were about to lose their home, but we were able to be stabilized with this funding, right? And so we've secured. Is that different?
Sorry, I just realized the 344 number is actually that the HAP would be the 82 on the other side of the page at the top. 82 homeowners approved for home repair assistance from the URA. I defer to Kiana, but I imagine almost all of those are HAP projects and potentially some HAPPY projects, which is accessibility.
That's correct. The 344 units are rental units that have either been newly created that were not existing or that had to go through critical improvements to be able to be preserved and maintain habitability.
Is that like just restricted to multifamily then? Or did you count just?
The 344 is the combination of what you see listed out by category, affordable units, total URA investment. So there's some for sale included in that as well.
The
in
chart
this box,
in the middle,
in this
right
box.
next to it.
Yes, so that's for sale units and rental units created.
Let me just say it out loud this way then. Can I add together the 344 box with the 112 box plus the 82 box?
Yes, I think you can.
Yes, I can. All right, so
good total picture.
Thank you. And so that's 194 plus 344, which is, God help me, 458. Nope.
538.
38. I did it the wrong way. Okay. So that's that plus the 1,500 or so that were helped. That we also, again, I keep saying it this way. You know, they didn't get forced out to Shaler or forced out to McKees Rocks or forced out to one of the other cheaper municipalities that ring us, which is what happened for 10 years when we weren't doing these kinds of investments. So, you know, that is a significant. That's just 1 year.
That is 1 year, and that doesn't, as we discussed earlier, the slide you're looking at does not include any of the ARPA-funded affordable housing work that took place either. So the impact
so that
is
was
significant.
1 year. So what is the other ARPA stuff? Isn't in the packet at all?
It is not in the packet, but
Okay.
we can
All right.
follow up with updated numbers.
Okay, that'd be great. I appreciate that. And so as we're looking at, you know, the various types of funds, because some of them are going to you all, some of them may not be going to you all, of that, how we're doing, you know, more housing assistance, housing repairs. Because again, I kind of didn't get to finish those anecdotes about those home repairs. I mean, that really is also helping to keep our city residents in their homes, right? So, I've heard mostly stories about seniors, right? Like the kitchen was not functional or the roof was falling in, and some of them might be accessibility things, but they're so valuable for, like everybody on the street usually is really happy that that member of their neighborhood got to stay in their neighborhood too, right? So it's not just the individual household. So I just wanted to say that is something that I hope we have the capacity to continue. And I think we are doing that, especially since we kind of added up our capacity and, systems to effectuate the program, right? We don't want to kind of like just unwind the program for no reason. Which leads me into my next question, which isn't in the packet, and I'm still going to ask about it. So it's not like there's no new money in this packet, but I still want to ask about the money that we've given you in the past for childcare funding, because I was so impressed with the outcomes. And so, do you still have those programs? Do you had like a person as a loan officer who had to learn all about the local childcare industry and the regulatory environment and insurance and all that stuff? And I've forgotten who it is.
Yeah. So I'll turn it over to Sienna in a second here, but the short answer is yes.
Good.
Thank you for the investment of childcare dollars. They were incredibly important in leveraging additional funds from partners like PNC in a partnership with our CDFI.
1.5 million from PNC just for childcare.
I don't want to
Out
say
of
off
the
the top
10
of
that
yeah.
they gave us for emergency COVID small business funding, they were so impressed with your childcare programming that they set aside 1.5 million, if I'm not mistaken.
That sounds correct, but I don't have the number in front of me. But I'll turn it over to Sienna. The short answer is those programs do exist. The funding is being drawn down, but I'll hand it over to Sienna.
Yes. Thank you, Councilwoman. We do still have some of the funds that we will be drawing down, but to echo what David had mentioned, our Business of Childcare course, which is supported through some of the funds that were allocated through PNC to actually create that program. So we worked with a consultant originally to kind of create the program that now lives at Chatham, and they offer this course twice a year. And it's actually been expanded to the county, but we still support those that are doing the Business of Childcare course that live or opening a space within the city of Pittsburgh. So those dollars are still being used to support those classes that are going through. And actually, they just had their graduation last week. So 17 new businesses, either existing or looking for space within the city of Pittsburgh, were supported through dollars that came from the city. And that will continue into next year. So we also have a contract with Trying Together, and some of those funds support that as well. And through Trying Together, they have a cohort to help existing childcare businesses, whether they're brick and mortar or home-based businesses, have some shared services to help those businesses have more capacity for less money. Because as you know, the overhead is expensive and the margins are thin in the childcare industry. So our lending analysts do work with a lot of childcare businesses through our CRIB program, which is that $20,000 forgivable loan. And then of course, if they attend the course through Chatham, that's run by Patricia Stenko, who is a childcare provider, they are eligible for additional $5,000. And then we support their attendance, through our partnership with Chatham. Did that answer your question?
It does. And so even though I don't see new money here, I think it is important to me, and I hope, and maybe to some other colleagues, to make sure that we don't go backwards. And so if there needs to be, it's an easier investment to keep it going. And so we've already, I think, had significant investment. It was $2 million on the mayor's side and $250 that this council allocated. It was one of my budget amendments in the December 2019 to move $250,000 over to the URA, but then COVID happened and PNC match happened. And so it's a really robust and impactful and impressive program. So it would be easier to have a little bit of money to make sure that it's not lost. And so I'm just going to flag that. Maybe we can follow up, and maybe we can talk to Pete and see if not, not making any substantial changes, but just make sure that it doesn't get forgotten and lost, because I really think it's been, I think, impactful to every part of the city. So I appreciate that. I think that's all I have for questions on this section.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilwoman Strasburger is next in the queue.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to add to my colleagues' thanks to you and your staff. The way that I interact with the Urban Redevelopment Authority's staff most is through the small business program. And, as you said, your staff are creative, and that's true. Taking the opportunity to arrange for, spending a whole day or a half day in a business district, literally walking door to door and inviting council members to join is just wonderful. It was a great opportunity for me to meet some of our new businesses in the district I represent, and it was a really great experience. I have to call out that so creative. There's a little booklet that's been created allowing for people who are planning a wedding to utilize URA funded businesses. It's in our office, and we can just give it to someone who wanted to utilize that. So great work all around on what we've heard so far, and programs like that maybe don't get the spotlight they always do. I just wanted to ask one question, and it's this gray box in the HOF 80% AMI and below for rental gap program. I of course, would never, ever want to take away from funding that is already earmarked for 30% and 50% AMI and below, right? Because we know that is the greatest need. But we also are in a time that's a little different from when the HOF was first, came into inception, and we want to attract more development maybe now than we did then, because it was different neighborhoods had a kind of a hotter market than they do now in the post-COVID era. Have you heard of, or have you discussed amongst yourself, or to the extent that you can talk to us about this, public right now, taking some of the other maybe smaller items from the 80% AMI and below from the other categories and combining them to offer the same types of 80% AMI and below rental gap program financing that, say, other peer cities have that we're competing against when it comes to attracting development regardless of whether there's, IZ aside, regardless of that. I've experienced multiple occasions in Shadyside, Squirrel Hill, Oakland, where of their own volition, I guess Oakland has an IZ now too, but want to provide that sort of workforce level affordable housing, rental housing, and are saying, hey, in this city, in this city, in this city, there's funding available. We just don't have it in Pittsburgh in the same way. I understand the HACP has some ways to contribute to that, but it's still not the same as what we're seeing in other cities. And I just wondered what the conversation has been around that. And if the reason is housing stabilization, down payment, closing cost assistance, homeowner assistance program is so successful that we would never ever want to take away from that, then that's the answer. But I'm just curious.
Yeah, I'm going to hand that one over to Chief Housing Officer Kiana Wassler to weigh in on.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yep.
That's a great question. Thank you. It's yes, that is part of the answer, is what the need in the housing stabilization program, as well as the legal assistance program, and those programs that are kind of meeting the strong need, the quick need, the prevention of eviction, those types of services, the need in those programs outweighs the amount of funding that we have available for it. For instance, to date, the housing stabilization program is basically closed because they've run out of funds, and I think they closed in November. And so we get into a situation where we have to tap into those demo dollars to kind of help programs like that maintain beyond the funding they're typically allocated. So yes, we do get requests to go into workforce housing. It's really dependent on the sources of funds that we have. We do have sometimes flexible sources that allow us to provide for sale opportunities at a workforce level. Haven't seen that as much lately because I think housing needs across the country have been geared more towards affordable levels, which are 80% AMI and below. But so we do get the requests. It's not as common as the affordable request, but at this time, the affordable requests are so great that we have not considered using the Housing Opportunity Fund for a workforce type of request. But the demonstration dollars, as mentioned earlier, is a fund that could be used for pilots. And so, you know, once we have streamlined our process to apply to that, someone could apply for something like that, and the Housing Opportunity Fund Advisory Board would review that request in one of their monthly meetings.
Okay, that's helpful. I'll continue to send people your way so that you're getting those requests that I'm hearing as well.
Thanks.
So it's reflected. And then my only other question is the small landlord fund. I'm curious to hear what the thought might be once rental registration is up and going, particularly when there are going to be needed repairs, particularly when, not if, when we get lead added to, right, lead abatement added to those types of that checklist for inspection. There are going to be rental property owners that have to make funds and need access to capital. Maybe there are other sources that I just, I'm not thinking of, or I don't know the URA enough to know that they can access, but like lines of credit, but that seems like one to maybe keep in mind for the future.
I agree with you. The small landlord fund does have some capital available in it that's not committed at this time. And as things change with rental registration and other, things that come into the housing ecosystem, those demonstration dollars could potentially be tapped to support the small landlord fund, if interest ramps up in it and we need to provide additional dollars to it.
Okay.
Yeah. I'll also add that it was an underutilized program. We reviewed the guidelines to see if we could make any tweaks to make it more utilized and more interesting for landlords. They're a client that isn't eager to take on public money. And so we did review the program guidelines, made changes with our board. And so hopefully between what Kiana mentioned and the program guidelines tweaks, more landlords will take advantage of it. Yeah.
I also just wanted to mention when you brought up the lead issue, the URA does partner with Allegheny County, and we do receive sort of lead abatement grants through the county's application, and we work in partnership with them to administer that within the city of Pittsburgh while they're administering it in the county. So there, to your point, is sort of separate funding set aside for that, and we do go after those federal grants.
That's great to hear. Thank you. That's the extent of my questions. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Next in the queue is my good friend from south of the river as well. I used to live in District 4 for a short period of time, so I have a fondness for that area of the city. Councilman Coghill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We miss you over there.
I miss you
You're
too.
a nice asset.
I got to get back over there. We can hang out on Broadway.
Right. Thank you for being here. Most of my colleagues asked any questions that I might have thought of myself, so I'm going to keep it specifically to my district. Okay. Investment-wise, URA, of course, there's Berg Place, there's CASA, which we're in the middle of. What other investments does URA have in my district?
Those are, off the top of our heads, the two largest sort of capital development and housing development projects within your district. I don't want to say that's conclusive. We'd have to go check and get back to you with certainty. But I would like to highlight what Councilmember Gross was talking about earlier when she brought up sort of the individual resident assistance. Much of that investment is making its way into District 4 as it is available citywide.
Yeah, right. Okay, so that's big projects, I guess I was referring to, but that's comforting to know. And I know many of my constituents have taken advantage of that, and I'm really glad to see that. How much was the investment in Berg Place? Do you remember on the URA side? I want to say $2 million. Does that sound right?
On the acquisition side,
Yeah.
can I get back to you on that?
Wait. Okay, so you mean you're talking about when you say acquisition, when they came into your hands, you actually
Yeah, acquisition and
Paid?
property maintenance.
yeah, property maintenance and everything, but there
Minor,
was no sale price.
I would have to get back to you and let you know when we say acquisition cost, normally sales price is the largest component
Right.
of that. As you're aware, we went through a court process to receive Berg Place. And so to your point, there would not be a sales price, but
Right.
there are certainly acquisition costs and legal fees associated with that process. So there is some sunk cost in that, as well as you're aware, sunk cost in sort of the maintenance and upkeep of the property in terms of just trying to keep folks out. I know we are.
I was going to say, I don't know what maintenance and
yeah.
upkeep you have other than
minor.
Sure,
boarding it up every
you know.
once in a while.
trying to keep it boarded up.
Understood.
You know, as you're aware, it's slated for demolition, so we wouldn't invest too much money in upkeeping the structure. But you know, we do try to keep it boarded up. We know that it can be a nuisance.
It really is. It's
Yeah.
When you say slated for demolition, you mean by
The-
CHS, the developer?
As you're aware, we're working on it. So
Good deal.
it is
Right.
it is very
That's what I wanted
likely
to say,
that the developer will be doing it. But we also, you know, we talk all the time about public-private partnerships.
Right.
When there are demolition grants available at the state and federal and other levels, we do look at that. We apply for it. This is certainly a property we have in mind when we're making those applications.
Yeah. And so if we were to secure the funding to demo it, okay, on our dime, the URA's dime, I guess, really, right? We would be reimbursed by CHS because they included that in their proposal to develop the place, correct? We would be reimbursed? Is that how we work?
I don't want to.
If and when they get the necessary funding themselves.
I was going to say, you know, I don't want to speculate too far into the future. I think it really would depend on, you know, what source of funds we're able to secure potentially for a demolition and sort of the capital stack that CHS is ultimately able to assemble. I think, you know, these types of things are open for negotiation until we really, you know, put it in front of the board for approval. But certainly if the URA or the public is spending funds to do demolition, to do site prep, it would absolutely be a factor in our discussions with the developer.
Sure, about reimbursing or, you know, whatever. We'll figure that out as we go. But certainly if we pay for it, it's already factored into their development price to demo the place.
So it's less of a cost
Yeah,
for them.
so as bad as I want this place demoed, I don't want us footing the bill, okay? I want CHS to foot the bill. And if it means we're putting the money up front, I'm fine with that, as long as we're getting refunded.
Yep.
So we'll get refunded one way or the other if we do manage to find the monies to take it down.
That's correct.
Okay. So Sheila, you broke my heart that morning, you know, when you called me about the light tech.
Yeah.
And you know,
I
the
apologize,
neighborhood,
yeah.
nothing was, but on the positive side, CHS has not gone anywhere. They've attended meetings, community meetings. They're fully committed. I hate for them to have to wait on another, you know, and hope and pray that they get their LIHTC next year. But and
I agree. It was disappointing. It's rare that a 9% LIHTC is awarded on the first attempt.
I know.
So,
but we were so sure.
Fingers
about
crossed.
this,
Yeah.
So yeah, that was disappointing. But either way, I'm really happy that they stayed committed. I'm really happy that you're looking at avenues to possibly demo it on our own. It will save us public, as you say, the cost of having the place. Just it really is a matter of sending firefighters, police there, and keeping people out of the building and reboarding it up after it gets torn down. But it's really bad. The back porches are falling off. It's only a matter of time before somebody playing around there gets seriously injured. It really is bad. So yeah, I would love to see that torn down in the meantime while we're waiting for CHS, because in reality, it's going to be a year before we know or hope they get their next LIHTC. And then probably be another year before they even start. So I'm looking at 2.5 years, I think, before where that place is just going to be sitting there. So yeah, if we can get that demoed, that would be a big deal for me in the Carrick community. But also, again, I don't want to give up that money. I don't want us to foot that bill. I take assurance that you're telling me that CHS somehow will negotiate if we're able to demo that place.
We factor in.
Or even
We
if it's not
factor that in.
if say CHS doesn't get their,
Yeah.
LIHTC next year, so we could always look at whoever proposes whatever else there. We will always factor that in where we won't shoulder the cost. Yeah. So, okay, that's great. Disappointing, of course, but what are we going to do? CASA has already started, right? Yeah, and that's the URA's portion. Talk to me about that.
Yeah.
I see it every day, but I want to hear from you.
I was going to say, you probably drive past it more often than I do, so probably well appraised of the progress, but we were super excited. I think that was a groundbreaking in October of this year. Yeah. And that, as you're aware, is an ARPA-funded project. The city of Pittsburgh kindly provided the funding to help us advance that project forward.
And David, on that note, how much was that funding? Do you know?
That was $2 million.
$2 million. That's
yeah.
Okay.
And it is a large structure. There's a large structure on a hillside that has seen significant deterioration over time. By the time it came into the URA's hands, so that $2 million coupled with Casa San Jose, the groundbreaking, what we're really moving forward with is core and shell sort of phase one, getting that project completed, making sure we're spending down the ARPA funding within the federal guidelines and under federal regulations. And then, we certainly look forward to moving forward with phase two.
So our end of stabilizing that, does that include windows, doors? Does that include just stabilizing it? What's that mean? Like, what's URA's part?
I can get back to you with the full scope of what phase one is going to pay for. I don't want to speak out of turn, but we can certainly get you the phase one scope.
Right. And we know that Monica Ruiz in CASA has been approved for the rest of the funding for what they want to do there. Is that right?
For the RCAP grant, they were able to secure an RCAP grant for the remaining of the core and shell, and then the phase two, they have the funding for the phase two, I believe.
I know they've made significant progress on fundraising for phase two. I don't believe we have brought phase two in front of our board yet, so I cannot say with certainty that they have fundraised completely. I think part of making that determination will be where they're at by the time phase one is complete and what the scope and the costs of that scope are for phase two. But, we have confidence in CASA. They've been a great working partner. I know they do fantastic work in the neighborhood and citywide. So it's a project we're excited about.
I have full confidence that Monica is going to secure whatever funding she hasn't already. I want to say she's almost 100% there, but I can't. If you don't know, I don't know for sure either. But so if for some reason it falls through with CASA, which I don't anticipate, we're just stabilizing it anyway for a potential next buyer. We're not losing anything on it by investing what we're putting in there.
We are not losing anything.
Right. Okay. The bond, we mentioned the bond, $30.6 million available to the city, and we drew down $3.3 million. Is that right? 3.3, yeah. All that money's there to draw on at this point.
Yes, all the money is available minus the 3.3 we've already drawn.
Right, and if I remember right, the URA is not responsible for the payments. It's the city of Pittsburgh.
That's correct. That's when we talked about the 2.5 operating transfer. It's not in the table, which is just the capital budget, but in the city's operating budget, there's the $2.5 million operating transfer to pay for the affordable housing
for
bond.
25 years or so. So I'm just trying to figure out a total sum of what we have wrapped up in affordable housing. We got, I say 30.6, but it's really $60 million there that we're paying on. So that's $60 million there. What was the total of ARPA money that was transferred to the URA to be designated toward affordable housing?
Of the 70 million, I believe it's around 40 million.
40 million.
Yeah.
And what was the other 30 for?
All of the other line items, which
Okay.
we can go through,
Gotcha.
including
No, we
Casa
don't-
San Jose.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, we don't need to go through that.
Yeah,
I'm
we have a
just looking
dashboard. We
at
can
it.
send it to you.
Okay, so, and beside that, what other funding sources go to affordable housing?
Housing Opportunity Fund, which is 10.
That's 10 a year.
That's in the operating budget.
Yeah.
And then
But you guide that money.
With an advisory board,
Right.
yes.
Sure.
And then you'll see in the table in our presentation, the 8.8 million included in the capital budget for 2025 is 600,000 in CDBG and just under 2 million in home. And then there's 5 million in CDBG for that housing leverage for Bedford Choice. So once you factor all of that in there, roughly 7 million for 2025. I don't have the 2024 numbers with me, but it is roughly in line with that.
Okay, well, the 10 million's HOF, it's going to be every year for many years, I would think. So we're well north of $120 million, say, in affordable, direct money going to affordable housing.
Well,
I'm counting the $30 million.
I was
going to
say, yeah, I know
have
you're
to count
counting.
that. It's real money.
Yes, I understand the calculation. I guess understanding that calculation, includes the interest,
Right.
the 60 million in that, and the 40 million from ARPA. I do think it's important to recognize is one time sort of payments, and the recurring amount is more of the 10 million in the HOF and whatever is allocated each year in the capital budget.
And if I was listening before I came in here, and we spent 44 million so far in affordable housing. Did I get that right?
Talking about the ARPA funding?
I thought it was overall, but I wasn't quite clear. I remember, I think Councilwoman Warwick asked, and it was $44 million that we had exasperated in affordable housing since we've started tackling it.
Oh, since when?
Since you started investing in affordable housing.
Oh, okay. We'll have to go back.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll have to go back and look,
Okay.
but that 44 million.
This year or
I
forever?
don't know. That's
forever,
what I'm asking you.
Okay.
I didn't know if that meant over the past 5 years or if that meant just this year. Or
No,
what.
happy to sit down and talk with you about like overall scope, and we can get some time periods defined. But I do want to be clear that the URA over its long history has invested much more than 44 million into affordable housing.
Okay, yeah, it's not that important. So, anyway, thank you for coming up. Berg Place specifically, I remember you were both up there. The battle we went through to get that into our hands, only to be let down by the LIHTC loan. But we're still on the right path there, and I'm so happy to hear that. The neighborhood, I've explained it to them. They know. There's what can we do, right? How much was that gap that the LIHTC loan was for, or grant was for? Was it just a couple $1 million, right?
Kiana might be able to answer that.
Yeah.
In the meantime, while she gets on camera, the 44 million, I believe, that you're referencing is related to what's been deployed in ARPA funding.
Okay.
And there's, of the 70 million, 42 million is toward affordable housing.
Okay.
And that's over multiple years, so
Yeah.
not just this year. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
5 years, I guess. So.
Kiana's off. Okay.
Yeah, that's okay. I don't
Councilman had a question about our gap financing commitment for the Berg Place LIHTC 9%. Did you hear that?
Yes, thank you. The URA can provide up to $2 million in gap financing per LIHTC deal, and so that's what we're expecting to deploy to Berg Place if they win a LIHTC award.
What's the LIHTC award for?
That's
Well, they have to first win, because low-income housing tax credit is the majority of the financing that they'll need for the project. They will have to apply again to PHFA. This is for Berg Place. Apply again to PHFA, and once they win that award, we will start the process to provide gap funding to them.
Are you asking what the
Yes.
value, like what the
What is
cash
the
value of the LIHTC award?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, David.
I defer to Kiana. I don't think we have that level of detail right now.
Like,
and
I'm
it
wondering
would
why
be-
it broke the deal. How many?
Yeah.
Were we talking millions? I don't know myself.
I think
know
we
they
should
didn't get it,
probably
but
have a
broke the
separate
deal. Okay,
meeting
that's
just
fine,
about
that's
Bird
fine.
Place and
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Thank you.
Okay, no,
right,
that's it for me. I really appreciate the work that you do in my neighborhood, and these two projects in particular have been very important to me. I've championed both of them, and I'm so glad that at least one of them has come to fruition, and the other one will too, and we know that, so thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Sorry,
Councilman.
that's it, Mr. Chair.
I just had, one question. I want to thank my colleagues, for a range of really, diverse and thoughtful questions. And I think, any question I could have possibly thought of, essentially has been asked. I just had one question about the affordable, housing bond. Maybe two questions. First question is that the goal is to create, or preserve 1,000 rental and for sale units over in the first 3 years of the fund. What is the breakdown of rental and for sale of the 1,000?
Kiana, do you want to try and take that one?
Yeah, I would say I don't have that in front of me right now. We can definitely kind of do a breakdown for you and provide that information to you. How we support for sale housing is we provide up to $130,000 per unit. So if we look at wanting to provide approximately 10 to 15% of the funds towards for sale, I'm trying to do some quick math here, and then divide that by $100,000, we'll get how many units that is. So that's kind of a way to do a quick math opportunity, but I'm happy to, reach back out to you with that information if that's okay.
Sure, I appreciate it. And then just to follow up, over the lifetime of the bond, if 1,000 were going to be created and preserved over 3 years, how many would be created and preserved over the lifetime of the bond? And if you don't have it immediately, I can.
That's a great question. I don't have it immediately. I would say we create or preserve, as you can see in our 2024 numbers, we're at, sorry, just pulling it up again. We're at 344 units created or preserved, and that's only through Q3. So we estimate to create or preserve approximately 400 to 500 units per year. So that's depending on, how many, what the LIHTC looks like in the future years, how many awards the city gets, if funding availability changes and interest rates, all the things. So we estimate approximately 400 to 500 units created per year.
And Councilman, we are required through our agreement with the city and the legislation that council passed to provide an annual report on the performance of the bond each year. So I believe that report is due 90 days after the end of the calendar year. So each spring we'll be delivering to the city and to council an annual report that will spell out the performance of this bond. I know there's been a lot of questions at the table today about that and future projections of it. We can do our best to try and project into the future, but the actual performance will be documented and in a very transparent way.
Thank you for that. That exhausts my question. Do any other members have any follow-ups? No, I guess so. With that, I want to, again, thank you. We work, very closely, not only on projects in District 9, but obviously because I'm the chair of this committee. So, but I appreciate, all the hard work you do, and it's been great, working with you very closely over these last 11 months, and look forward to continue to work with you in the future, addressing, the very serious challenges, particularly around housing, but around economic development in general, as a city that's not Austin, Texas, or Seattle, Washington, that's growing exponentially over the last few decades. It really, requires us to work together collaboratively, like many cities like Pittsburgh that, had, behemoth populations in the 1950s and 1960s, and not quite so, in the current time. So, I really applaud you for your work, and thank you for your time today, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you all so much. Really appreciate your time and your continued engagement and communication throughout the year.
All right.
Thank you.
With that, I'll take a...
Land bank. Land bank.
We got the land bank. Yeah, so...
There's more fun. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
So thanks again to the staff of the URA for a very substantive presentation. And now, as Budget Director McDevitt said, the fun continues. And so now I'd like to invite the staff from the Pittsburgh Land Bank to join us at the table. And while Director Stadelman is joining us, I ask our Budget Director, Peter McDevitt, to give a brief overview of the Pittsburgh Land Bank.
Take one and pass it down. Thank you, Councilman. The mission of the Pittsburgh Land Bank is to return unproductive real property to beneficial reuse through an equitable, transparent, and public process, revitalize neighborhoods to strengthen the city's tax base, and support socially and economically diverse communities. The Pittsburgh Land Bank is governed by a 9-member board of directors, 3 of whom are appointed by City Council, representing the districts with most distressed and vacant parcels. Councilman Wilson is the board chair, Councilman Lavelle is the vice chair, and Councilman Mosley is the board secretary.
Thank you, Director McDevitt. And before I introduce Director Stadelman, I do just want to acknowledge for the record, we are joined by Council President Lavelle, Councilman Wilson, Councilwoman Strausberger, Councilman Coghill, Councilman Charlin, and Councilwoman Gross. And now, Director Stadelman, please introduce yourself, including your title.
Thank you, Councilman Mosley. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sally Stadelman. I am the manager of the Pittsburgh Land Bank. And before I get started, I just want to check in with Peter here. All right, will you be projecting my slides?
I can do that.
Or do we need to pause and get all that
Get there.
taken care of? I'm impressed we went right in with no break. Everyone's...
They're printed. Oh, yeah, we have. I was on top of that.
Boy, I missed that. Okay. All right, I'm going to pause. All right, well, while Peter pulls that up, the first couple slides are just a quick overview, a reminder of the Pittsburgh Land Bank and information about land banks in general. The Pittsburgh Land Bank is one of almost 40 land banks in the state of Pennsylvania. So we're not a unique tool, and in fact, land banks exist all across the United States with the purpose of removing barriers to more efficiently and effectively repurpose vacant and abandoned tax delinquent housing. You just saw this very long, impressive presentation from the Urban Redevelopment Authority. This particular land bank here in Pittsburgh is here to serve as a tool to more effectively remove liabilities from vacant, abandoned, tax delinquent property and repurpose that property. We are here to complement all of these wonderful existing pathways to repurpose property. So we're just here to move it from point A to point B, and we're lucky to have so many great nonprofit CDC partners, the City of Pittsburgh and the Urban Redevelopment Authority, already doing so much great work. And so we can actually keep skipping along here. Take me to slide 4. I think everybody's probably seen these a few times over the years. One more. Just a quick overview of the there's state law, including the Land Bank Act, MICDL, the local ordinance, and many other guiding documents for that regulate the Pittsburgh Land Bank, including the Tri-Party Cooperation Agreement, our cooperation agreement with the URA, which is an exhibit to that. All of those documents are available on our website. And of course, we use the word affiliate with the Urban Redevelopment Authority. We have a staffing agreement with the URA, so we cover the costs of our own staff, and then we pay to be able to use and rely on URA staff, and we certainly could not do our work without the help of the URA. You had Damara Carter sitting up here earlier, who helps with our finances. We report up to the real estate director, ML Meyer, who provides a lot of technical expertise to help us acquire and clear title on this property. So really couldn't do without them. And so I'm just going to give a quick overview of what we have in our inventory. And so most of the projects that I'm going to present on so far have come to us and have been approved through the Land Bank's non-competitive disposition policy. So these categories were approved by our board in 2022, and we use them as guidance to determine if it's appropriate to approve a buyer up front. So most of the time we're working with well-known partners, community development corporations, and nonprofits across the city who have been acquiring publicly owned property and rehabbing it or constructing new housing for many years, and they fit within those requirements, so we know who that buyer is up front. And that's how we've really begun our work here at the Land Bank. We can go to the next computer. Oh yeah, I guess I could do that, yes. All right. And so while we're reviewing these projects up front to ensure viability, you heard from Kiana Wassler with her and her staff review the projects that are submitted to the Land Bank to make sure that they are viable projects. And then once property is sold, most of the time we are using either a renovation enforcement mortgage or reverter deed that would allow the Land Bank to either foreclose or take back that deed if a project is not completed or is completed in a different way than what was applied for. So some quick stats. So we currently have 66 properties in our inventory. And I cannot stress enough, 2024 is the first year that we have had a functional land bank. This is the first time that we have owned property, period. So 66 in the inventory, another 75 are pending transfer from the city's inventory, which means that this council has approved the transfer of 127 properties to the city of, the Pittsburgh Land Bank. So thank you very much for all of your support and cooperation this year. Within our inventory, we've completed 32 quiet title actions as of November 21st, and we've got another 29 active quiet title actions. Also just like to point out our costs that in order to be a sustainable organization are passed on to our buyers through the purchase price, and those are running on average about $7,500 for a vacant lot and $10,000, not including any kind of stabilization costs for a structure. Just a quick breakdown of what that looks like per council district. So you will see there is a glaring issue with this circle, Councilman Coghill, and that is we do not have any properties from District 4. So I want to declare right now, 2025, the year of land bank acquisitions in District 4. We're really eager to get to work there. And I think what this really emphasizes is that our inventory so far has been has been driven by these seasoned nonprofits and CDCs that had already been using these processes to acquire property and had been waiting to begin using the land bank. And so that's really what's driven these numbers so far. I'm going to talk a little bit later about our pilot residential rehab program, and I think that's a really great way that we can expand programming in districts that don't have that kind of longstanding community development corporation activity in their district, but still have a need to repurpose vacant and abandoned property. I'm also getting a signal from, I think Councilman Wilson to mention, of course, District 7 and 8 don't have properties on here as well, and I think that would be mostly because the need is much less, but I'd say in District 7 especially, because we are not quite set up yet to access property through the sheriff's sale, we really don't have a reliable way to purchase property in hotter markets because we will simply lose them at the treasurer's sale. So I'll talk about that at the end to cover our progress on the intergovernmental cooperation agreement, but that would also unlock our ability to make more purchases in hotter markets that we currently really can't do unless someone were to donate property. Okay, so just a quick overview of some of our projects here. We've got 4 community gardens and urban farms that we're working to transfer to the Allegheny Land Trust, who will permanently protect those projects. We've got many existing single-family homes that are going to be rehabbed and resold to an 80% AMI buyer. Our biggest partner right now is the Pittsburgh Housing Development Corporation, another affiliate of the URA, who have, I want to say, 20 parcels total in our inventory that soon will be transferred. So, but a really great benefit with this partnership is, so prior to the land bank coming online, PHDC and buyers like them needed to wait to access property to begin the process of cleaning them out and really assessing them and getting ready to start that the rehab portion of the project. And so what we're able to do when we acquire a property is PHDC is able to go in right away, clean up the property, clean it out, begin to stabilize it while the land bank is working to clear title. And while it's in the land bank's inventory, there are no taxes accumulated. So it's this benefit where they can own the property for less time, so that's a little less cost accumulation. And many of these properties have sat for a long time, and it's critical to get in as soon as possible and to begin cleaning them up. The picture you see on the screen is a very typical image of what these houses look like in the city's inventory or are privately owned and sitting vacant across the city. So the sooner we can get in there and clear all that out and really see what's going on, the better for the project, and hopefully bring some cost savings. We're also working with Rising Tide Partners and the Hilltop Alliance on some affordable rehab. We have many new construction affordable housing projects moving through this pipeline as well, including the Beltsuver Consensus Group, Charles Street Area Corporation, more Rising Tide property. Habitat for Humanity's got 2 locations in Larimer and Homewood, and more. And then we have some small business and nonprofit partner applicants. Tink Plus Designs is a great example of a URA collaboration where this is an architecture firm that's applied to purchase a structure in the URA's inventory. We're acquiring the city-owned parcel next to it so that they can provide parking for this building they're applying to rehab in the URA's inventory. We've got Farmer Girl Ebb, who is going to be opening or really moving her fresh food farm stand in Sheridan. So that property will have a clear title very, very soon. A couple more examples there. And then I'm also very excited to announce on Monday, the Pittsburgh Land Bank was able to attend the sheriff's sale and acquire the Teenie Harris house. Many entities had been working, trying to figure out how to address this problem, especially since the new historic placard had been placed in front of the building. So we were very pleased to be able to play this role in attending the sheriff's sale, and we're even able to acquire the property for much less than we had originally thought. And so now Preservation Pittsburgh, in partnership with the Harris family, will now actually be able to effectively begin fundraising to really protect this, incredible cultural asset for the city of Pittsburgh. So, again, just that role of we're able to acquire, we're able to clear away those liabilities, and move that property on to a responsible owner. So I know that we have, I don't know that we have even had a chance to talk about that, if anyone else wanted to make comment about the Teeny Harris house.
No, I just want to, thank you, for your willingness to think outside the box. And I think this is the first time that the Land Bank has done something like that. As you know, it means a lot to me, not only because it's District 9, but like as I shared at our last at our last board meeting, my father worked with Teeny Harris and was friends with Teeny Harris when they worked together at the Courier. My father was a sports journalist, and Teeny was a photographer. And so my dad at 98 is one of the last few people I'm sure that actually worked with him. And he was at the dedication of the placard, and was with Teeny's children, who are much older than me, of course. And, they remember my father from the many times back in the 1950s, that they worked together. So it meant a lot to me personally, but also as a representative of home with that, the fact that we were able to get that done. I got to thank Council President Lavelle and Councilman Wilson, my colleagues on the Land Bank, for also supporting me and willing to do something outside of the box. But I think it is an important thing, for the city, and being that, he is, other than James Van Der Zee in Harlem, the most important photographer of African-American culture in the 20th century. So it's not only important for Black Pittsburgh and Pittsburgh as a whole, but, as far as just chronicling Black life, and particularly in the first half of the 20th century, anywhere in the country, you'll that 80,000 image archive, is something that you can't find, anywhere else. So, it's not only a treasure for our region, but it's a treasure, for the entire country.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, on that note, since Sally opened it up for questions, I just would like to ask, first of all, is it historic? Is it designated?
Currently not.
Okay.
But only because that kind of process was not able to move forward without a clear title.
Got it. Right. Is our intention to get it designated?
Yes. Yes.
Good.
Yeah, that's my understanding.
Good.
Yeah.
Maybe museum or something in the future. Can I ask what your winning bid was?
$26,000.
Yeah, it's okay. Good. Okay.
Yeah, seemed well worth the price
to
preserve
absolutely.
such an important structure.
Good job. Yep.
There's also city-owned property on either side of it, so we'll be not city-owned, but private tax delinquent property. So there's more work to be done. We've got clean-outs and additional acquisitions. So we talked a lot about a lot of those nonprofit driven affordable housing projects. Another really exciting program that we've been working to bring online this year is what we're calling our pilot residential rehab program. So this is, you could really think of this as just ripping a page right out of the Tricog Land Bank's book. This is in fact their bread and butter and the majority of work they do, which is simply acquiring the property, cleaning it out, clearing the title, and listing it for sale to find a responsible buyer. I think the twist with the Pittsburgh Land Bank's program is that we are specifically reserving properties for owner occupants. We're looking for someone who is purchasing, ideally with a mortgage rehab product, and intending to live in the home for at least 5 years. So right now we have a property listed on Zillow. It is on the MLS. People are touring it and walking through. It's at 1611 Antrim Street in Brighton Heights. And we've got 3 additional properties on High Street in Spring Garden we're hoping to bring online soon. And then we are waiting for 2 more properties on the Boulevard of the Allies in Uptown coming our way. I think a major, removing barriers like the wait time to have the title cleared, so that a property can be purchased in a timeline that is very similar to purchasing a property off the private market. And also just being able to clean out the property so that a buyer can walk through and see the problems, see where they need to be planning to make investments, and to be able to see a vision is really important. Just the nature of these properties is they often are full of a lot of stuff that need to be cleared away so we can see what's going on. Even just with some initial walkthroughs, it's a huge difference to walk somebody through a cleaned out house. And then another great perk of the program is, so we rely on URA contractors to complete a lot of this work. And a lot of them are doing really great work in the community. One example is Jamar Bay with the Southern Men Hilltop Group, where he has a nonprofit workforce housing program, and then an LLC that allows him to contract with the URA, PHDC, and the Land Bank to bid on these jobs and complete work for us. So that's so we're working with the community and creating opportunities for small businesses to participate in this work as well. So just a quick overview of what we're looking for applicants is we're looking for proof of financing that you can cover the cost to rehab the property. We need a basic rehab plan to make sure that funding and plan to rehab match up. You'll need to pass a qualified buyer check, just like the city does. Are you updating all your taxes? Not behind on any water bills? And then have the intention to occupy the property for 5 years. So, and of course, when we're reviewing these properties up front, at this time we are looking, making that calculation to make sure we're not acquiring something that would take more rehab than what the market would be able to fund. But that finance gap is still a challenge for a lot of communities in the city. So just kind of an overall snapshot of our pipeline here. So we have about 41 projects moving through the land bank. That includes what's in our inventory, what is on its way. And I'll just, since these are kind of small, I'll just read them out here. So about 24% of that is new construction affordable housing projects. 19% is affordable housing rehabs. 5% is art and culture. That is including the recent Teeny Harris acquisition. 20% is our small business and campus expansion projects. 15% is urban farms and community gardens. 5% is our pilot residential rehab program. About 10% is our pilot side yard sales. And then 2% is some pilot deconstruction projects that are being implemented by the Pittsburgh Housing and Development Corporation. So that's what is moving on its way. And then what we have completed this year is, I'm going to say 12 sales. The land bank has sold 16 properties total. Of that pipeline I've reviewed, we're expecting 2/3 of it to have closed by January or February of next year. So we have many, many, many pending sales. 16 completed this year. All right, and finally, of course, I've always got to end on the final frontier for the Pittsburgh Land Bank, which is the execution of an intergovernmental cooperation agreement between the Pittsburgh Land Bank, Allegheny County, the school district, and the city of Pittsburgh. I'm so excited to report that we are closer than we've ever been. We are currently in talks with the city, kind of going back and forth on edits, and so we are excited to be able to share that hopefully very soon with our partners and have that conversation. The Land Bank Act requires that this agreement must be in place for the land bank to be able to purchase property through the sheriff's sale for the cost of the sale. So that means that we're paying for the paperwork, not the cost of the back taxes and liens and encumbrances. So right now we're clearing title, but our quiet title powers are much more effective when we're using the sheriff's sale. That process should take about 9 to 12 months, and then we are acquiring the property at the end of that process with a clear title, with the exception of inheritance taxes. We have to exonerate those. So just a different, more effective process, and we simply need that agreement in place that really just says how it is that we are communicating with these partners around when we're looking to acquire property. It also includes something that's allocated through state law, which is a 50% tax recapture for the land bank on any property that we purchase for 5 years after it is returned to the market. And with that, that is my overview of the Pittsburgh Land Bank 2024. Thank you for your time. Happy to take questions.
Yeah, thank you, Director, for very substantive presentation. I guess we'll just start at the top of the table and work our way down. Council President Lavelle, any questions?
Thank you. I don't really have questions. Just wanted to say thank you.
Your mark.
Don't have questions. I'll actually have to step away to go pick up my daughter in a second. But I just want to say thank you for all the work that you've put in over the last year or so to really make the land bank as productive as it has been. But one thing for our colleagues that we really need to think through is that now that the land bank is actually up, is actually functional, how that we're going to financially sustain it throughout the moving forward once ARPA dollars go away. And that's something that we need to collectively begin to really think through, because it is functioning as Sally has already shown, and so we don't want to lose an asset that is playing a pivotal role in returning property back to the tax rolls. So that's something for us to, that's not necessarily your job, that's for us to figure the thing through, but we need to do that. But thank you for your work.
Thank you, Councilman Lavelle. Thank you for all your support.
Thank you, Council President. Councilman Wilson?
I'd actually like to go last. That's fine.
Okay. Yeah. Councilman Kako?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Piggybacking off what our council president just said, that was my question exactly. How much does it cost to operate this year? How much was it $3 million? I know you were originally slated for 7, and I think we chopped that to 3.
Our current ARPA allocation is $3.5 million. We're on track to have spent a little over $1 million by the end of this year, and then we're projected to spend about $2 million next year.
Okay, so you'll be out of money at the end of 2026. Projected.
I would say earlier 2026, and it's, I think a little bit of the trouble of projection.
Oh, wait, this is okay. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm a year behind. By the end of 25, you'll probably be out of money. Yeah, and I know we spoke about this before, and I don't know how other land banks function. I'm sure you do, but isn't there some way that we can get funding through the sales of the property or the taxes that are now being paid? That you have, I think, 16 that are going to be owned soon. So we'll be generating, at least, and especially by the end of next year, I'm sure we'll be generating a lot more in taxes because you'll have many more properties. Isn't there a way you can be self-sustained in whether it's that way or fees or some? Do other land banks self-sustain, or are they counting on government dollars?
That is a great question, and the answer is yes and no. So the land bank, and this is typical for all land banks, we will never be a self-sustaining organization unless all we're doing is, if we did nothing but sell property for $800,000 condos, that'd be one thing. But with our mission to help foster and create and protect affordable housing, there is a pressure and a need to provide that property at cost or below cost to support those affordable housing projects. And I mean, I wish that we could sell our properties for less, because that makes a big difference in an affordable housing project, and is a way to help keep those costs down, whether it's a publicly funded project or even just something that would be constructed on the private market. When the sales cost is low, that helps to keep the overall cost of the home low. So I think to meet that mission, that's one piece of it. And then if you think about our other mission of helping to remediate blight, we need to be able to take on some lemons. We need to be able to take on some property that's where we're going to need to invest more than what we'll ever get out of it in order to help stabilize that community. And for us to then sell other property on that street, maybe at a profit, we have to address the issue properties as well. And so I think that there's opportunity. We will be bringing in some revenue from our sales, but we're not always going to come in we're not even going to break even sometimes. And it's really just going to depend on the many factors. Who's asking for the property.
I don't expect you to be
project type.
self-sustaining by flipping properties of that nature. I guess I think about in the long run, if you have 300 properties by this time next year that are sold, the income that the property tax generates, do you know of other land banks? Do they get a piece of that?
Yeah, the Tri-Cog Land Bank, in their agreement, they do have that 50% tax recapture.
Okay, that's
for
what I
5
heard you
years.
mention, right? So,
yes.
So for 5 years, when somebody starts paying taxes, property taxes on the house that went through our land bank, you get to collect 50% of that tax.
Yes. So that will be some revenue.
Yeah, it's something,
the
right.
recuperation from the sales will be something. And then a third factor will also be when we are able to access the sheriff's sale. That is going to turn upside down the current way that we go about acquiring vacant and abandoned property. For the last 20 years, through the property reserve, when CDCs are acquiring property, the rule of thumb was that it needs to sit for 5 to 10 years or accumulate a lot of back taxes to help deter others from buying it at treasurer's sale. So that was the only way CDCs could acquire that property to do those affordable housing projects.
Understood.
So with the priority bid at sheriff's sale, that means that now we can use data to identify properties that have become abandoned, right? We know where over 600 dead-end properties are thanks to PLI, but we don't have a way to take them through a protected process to make sure they're responsibly repurposed. When we can use sheriff's sale, that is going to enable us to. We don't want to acquire something because you can visibly see it's starting to deteriorate. We want to look at that data to say, oh, we can see, this person's not responding to these really basic code violations. The person is deceased. The back taxes are accumulating. It looks like this is now the time to start that intervention. And I think that'll help us. Help us as well with balancing.
I appreciate
balancing
you pointing out the lack of properties acquired in the 4th District, but I will tell you that doesn't bother me. I know the market kind of dictates that for you at this point, I feel. And, I know eventually, you're going to be involved or acquiring properties in the 4th District. So I want you to know I don't look at that as like, why are you, I expect it to be coming, of course, but, I think just the market you're dealing with, the market of housing that we have right now, I think dictates it. I don't know. I'd like to think I don't have that much, but when I ride down streets, I do see it. But a lot of that's probably privately owned, and I don't know. You mentioned a co-op agreement with the 3 taxing bodies.
Yes, we have many agreements that have very similar names.
Right.
If you're talking about the intergovernmental cooperation agreement with the county, school district, city, that one, the one that's not been executed yet.
That's when you said you're close to.
Yes.
Okay, and that is forgiving back taxes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
That's the whole premise of that.
Exactly. Right. Clearing away. We have an agreement that says how I can acquire from the city. Now we need a process to request the city approve the exoneration of liens.
So they could be $50,000 in the hole to the school district, knowing nobody's going to move in there. It benefits them to forgive it and at least start anew, and somebody's paying something on it because they're never going to see that $50,000. Let's face it.
And that property is pulling down the property value of everything around it. So you're really losing out not just on that house, but whole streets, whole communities are kind of ground to a halt because we're not supporting the bottom of the market.
Right. Well, Sally, you're a manager, not a director, right? Is that
Yes.
okay, manager, stay to win.
That's me.
Okay, so I'll reiterate what I've said to you before. I think you've come in and done a fantastic job. And to have 66 properties under your belt right now is fantastic. It really is. I do worry, as our council president said, about your funding sources in the future. I'll make cuts in the other departments we have to, or any other things that we have to in order to keep you afloat. I think it's essential to keep you afloat. And I want to thank the others who are on, had much to do with this, my colleagues. But yeah, I'll do what it takes to make sure you remain funded. But we're good through 25. It's 2026 that we're worried about, whether it's how your operation, how you're going to be sustained.
Yes, exactly. Thank you, Councilman.
No,
I really
you're welcome.
appreciate it.
You're welcome. That's all for me, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Wilson?
Sorry, I reconsidered my position here. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for your great questions. I think that's really what we're going to talk about, is just the real simple questions of what is. I have the similar questions, and which is, as we move forward, what does that look like? Because, there we have the $3.5 million ARPA money, but really in the future, can you tell us like the mixture of your staff and where you think your staff is going, how many staff we have, how many, what would that grow to in the next 5 years, and what other services do we pay for at the U? I know this, but I just want to go over this for everyone.
So the land bank has, we have 3 staff, myself included as one of those staff members. We have a land transactions coordinator who just started with us this October, and then we have a part-time admin person who's especially helpful with preparing for our monthly board meetings. So I think that, in order to really effectively ramp up this programming, especially when I think about, the additional kind of engagement, support, and hand-holding that we want to do to grow the residential rehab program and be really effective at managing our inventory. I think at minimum, we're hoping to bring that administrative assistant to a full-time position. And having an additional staff member at least would be absolutely crucial to help grow those programs, to free up some of my time to apply for grant funding in 2025. From start to finish, there's just a lot of reviewing and paperwork just to even review a property and prepare it for our board meeting, and then to take it through the process of acquisition from the city, overseeing the quiet title process, managing the stabilization, clean out, and maintenance of that property. I think it's just one job in itself, and that doesn't include community engagement. That doesn't include, many other factors.
We rely on, we have a contract with the URA on the staffing agreement, which is, we're entering a new one. With that 1.5 staffer, what would the city get out of that?
With an additional staffer, I think, per staffer, I think we can just exponentially increase the number of property we're able to acquire.
That's what I
every
want to
year.
get to. So the number of property, how many, if we're doing the numbers on the screen, which were 70, I can't remember, it was,
We've got 66 right now,
Yeah.
and then 75 are coming. And then of course we'll have, I think that the learning curve of learning the sheriff sale process is also going to play a factor here. I think that
so with an additional staffer, like how many more are we talking about?
we could probably double what we're processing right now.
Double.
With an additional dedicated person doing that work, yes.
And that's doubling because just that staffer, or because, like, what is the sheriff sale also? You're asking on the sheriff sale, what does that actually do to the amount of properties does that change the type of property, or does that change the amount?
I think both. I think a big part of this, especially when you're dealing with structures, is you really have to go out and visit that structure really 2 or 3 times. You have to understand the neighborhood, you have to look at the comps, and then you have to go through the process of asking for a title report, reviewing that, figuring out what the liabilities are. It's just time-intensive work, and you have to be careful because once we acquire it, now we're going to be responsible for making sure it's getting repurposed. So you have to be very diligent upfront. And I think that's one of the heavy lifts that would be really meaningful to have an additional set of hands.
Yeah, I think one of the challenges people look at the land bank and thinking, well, you know, I mean, any, you know, business model, you don't want to grow it too fast. So, you know, with additional staffer to increase the amount of properties. And I know, you know, being the chair and, you know, understanding what's happening at the land bank in terms of what it takes to even get prepared for the meeting versus, I'm sorry, Andy, in addition to that, getting these property, like picking the properties, working with the community. I mean, that is a lot to take on. I know that we have a contract with the URA, but that's a lot of technical services. This isn't the bulk of what's happening. So, I mean, I think for one staffer, that's something we have to think about. But it really is the funding of the land bank in the future. You know, in the future, like, do we, and where do we, since money's tight, like, where do we take that from? You know, like, is there, like, what opportunities are available in the fund? We can't do everything, you know, as we move forward. You know, and that's why I continually ask the question, like, well, how are we going to maintain our tax base and you know, downtown, continually bring up downtown, big economic driver. We have places like the Strip. There's a lot of different places that are just big revenue creators, and we have great neighborhoods, and we have neighborhoods that, you know, can be even greater if they're, you know, if we have the land bank involved, the URA involved, the city involved. They're selling like everyone's working together, and with this small operation, you've been able to do so much. And I'm just really looking forward to having the conversation with, you know, my colleagues on how that's funded, you know, in the future, you know, past the ARPA funding, because that's really the key to this. I mean, we can do the contract to capture, you know, 50%. You know, the state allows us to capture the 50% of the taxes on these properties are go back on the tax rolls for 5 years. But I mean, how much revenue is that going to give us? Is there a projection?
Right. I'm sure it still will not. I mean, at least from when I talk to my friends at the Tri-Cog Land Bank, it's helpful. It's not a sustainable amount.
Right.
So
it's really something to dig our teeth into, and, you know, really just want to congratulate you for everything that, you know, you and your staff at the land bank that have been able to accomplish. I think something like the Teenie Harris House is just like this other muscle that, you know, the public continues to realize that the land bank has, and how we can really support communities in a lot of different ways. I might think of something else to ask, but I think, you know, the main point that I want to make was just, you know, how much, you know, we need to think about the funding of the land bank in the future.
And Councilman Wilson, if I could, I mean, what that also makes me think about is, you know, I think that what gives me hope when I think about our current inventory of privately owned vacant single-family homes. So we estimate there's around 1,000 properties out there that would be eligible for a tax foreclosure today that are vacant. Without intervention, what many of those are going to turn into is a taxpayer-funded demolition. And don't get me wrong, we still need a robust demolition program, and we will for some time, but there's a cost savings there that if we make an appropriate intervention, there'll be savings in the long run, and this could become really a finite problem, because you just have to get, you know, a lot of the problem is you need to be able to kind of fix those properties that are underwater, where, you know, if someone passes away and there's not, you know, there's clouded title, the cost to fix that problem as an individual is very expensive.
Yeah.
I mean, it can cost anywhere from $5,000 to $30,000 to be able to then sell the house. And if that house is already, you know, if the value is not there, you know, family members would end up walking away.
Yeah, I have to say that in a lot of respect, the land bank is very, it's like this addictive thing to think about, because I do think, because everyone here, I think, would agree that we continually talk about, demolitions in the city and how can we really get in there and save the property and, put it back on the tax rolls. And that's all of a sudden, this opens up the door to do that, to go in there, repair the roof, fix the beam. And I just think that's, what other entity are we going to have that's going to be able to do that in such a timely manner because of the powers that the state gives, any land bank in any municipality. So, yeah, thanks for the conversation, answering the questions, and I relieve my time. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Charlo?
Thank you. Appreciate, as always, you being here and always working with you, and all the work that you're doing in my district, which so severely needs it. One point that I think is we're talking about like how to fund the land bank in the future. Really important here is there's not just the cost of funding the land bank, but there's also the cost. There is the incurred cost of on the city of not funding the land bank. What it actually costs, as my district continues to move outside of the city because there are more properties on their street deteriorating than there are that people live in, and how that problem snowballs and snowballs and snowballs. So I do think that's like, it's not just a worthwhile cause to fund this as like a nice to have. It is, if we are not funding it, we are going to have less money to fund other things in the future. So it is a crucially important thing that we are funding here. I do want to ask the question as we get to the end of the ARPA year. What is if we were able to give you unlimited money, what do you think the most money you could spend in the next 2 years is?
Ooh, that is a really interesting question. So I think it would depend on a few different factors. I think how quickly we can ramp up with additional staff would be one. I think that the ability, we have a lot of partner organizations that have capacity but not funding, right? I mean, it's like a 3 to 5 year process to fundraise to do one of these rehabs. So, I mean, if we had unlimited funding, then we'd be able to just fund the complete rehab of a project, sure. Partner with PHGC, Hilltop Alliance, any CDC with that built-in capacity to complete full rehabs. And then we'd have, we could really commit to a lot more 80% or below AMI housing, and then that gives us the ability to, I think being able to fill the gap in a lot of communities where the market is not going to step in and provide enough funding to complete a rehab. We can fill that gap. We can provide, a lot of land banks they'll offer up to $30,000 in grant funding in addition to the purchase of the house itself.
But let's say we could give you $10 million, but ARPA rules, you need to spend it in the next 2 years. How far could you get through that $10 million?
Years? Gosh. Well, let's see if I could do some. If we did 160 houses, maybe we could say 200 houses with $3.5 million. I think every additional $3 million you add, you're adding another 200 houses.
And you could do that in 2 years?
So the sheriff still takes a year. Okay, so we've got 250 structures in the city's inventory. Mm-hmm. If we transferred all 250, tomorrow, we could get, we could probably save the majority of those. And they need, right, and they've been sitting for a long time. I mean, you could put a lot of money into just what's sitting and waiting for a home, waiting for an owner in the city's inventory. You could put a lot of money into that, and even maintenance, right? Sure. Even being able to address, I just had we get these calls periodically. People call and want to donate property.
I bet.
Yes. And
I hate those calls.
And a lot of them we haven't been able to take because don't have demolition dollars, right? I don't want to set a precedent because we don't have the funding to take on demolition, but we could also do demolition. So I could do a whole street at the time, take down the worst 2, stabilize the other 4, and then all of those properties now have a little bit more value. They have a little bit better of a chance making it back out onto the market because we've been able to tear down the problem properties. So this property I'm thinking of, there's a retaining wall. And so they're thinking they won't be able to sell it because you've got a maybe $40,000 to $80,000 retaining wall repair on this vacant lot in Marshall Shadeland. And so if we had the funding, we can address those liabilities and then really responsibly repurpose all kinds of property.
So $7 million?
Yeah, I mean, gosh, I mean, it's so hard to say.
I know, it is hard.
I do think we could easily spend $7 to $10 million
By the end of the ARPA deadline?
Yes.
Okay. Well, that's good to know. And other than just thanking you for the work that you do in my district and for your attention to Knoxville, which again severely needs it. We talk a lot about displacement here and the lack of investment in those neighborhoods south of the river is really driving the displacement. So I want to thank you for helping to stop that. So appreciate it and look forward to working with you for years to come.
Thanks, Councilman.
Thank you, Councilman. And batting cleanup today will be our esteemed member from District 7, my good friend, Councilwoman Gross.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I love hearing concrete timelines and concrete dollar amounts and concrete, achievable goals. So I'm already, at my calculator, so I don't have to do the math in my head. That's $40,000 a structure if you were trying to do, 250 structures with $10 million. But that includes your overhead, that includes your acquisition costs, that includes what other rehab or maintenance and all that kind of stuff. So just to keep that, maybe you said it elsewhere in the presentation, and I don't remember.
Yeah, I mean that's right on the money. I would say 40,000 on average. Some are going to need way less work, and some are going to need way more.
Some you might hold for 2 days. Some you might end up holding 2 years, right? There's a different amount of investment. But if you blended them all together.
I think 40,000 is a very good estimate per property of what's in the city's inventory, of what it would take to
clear it. Yeah. And those are, again, we talked about this a little bit. I don't remember why you were at the table last time. It was there aren't 17,000 empty houses. We just, sometimes people think that, and I wish there were, it'd be great. We could house everybody. Everybody gets a free house, but we can't, that's not what the reality is. There's 10,000 vacant lots and about 250 houses, which again, some might be falling down, some might not be falling down in various states of repair. I do also want to clarify, I'm just kind of picking up and running with some of the details of the conversation so far, that we have already seen several cooperation agreements. We've already seen several of these, and sometimes it's nice to just remind ourselves of which ones are which. So I kept 3 piles of paper in front of me. And so let's pretend that this is the city inventory of the 10,000 properties. We already did that cooperation agreement, right? And so that's not the one that needs to be done. When you say in your presentation that let's pretend this pile of paper, it does not say City of Pittsburgh on the deed. It says Anthony Coghill or Bob Charland on the deed, but there's delinquent taxes. If I'm remembering this right, it says that's what sheriff's sale, when you say take them with sheriff's sale.
Privately
owned,
yeah.
You're taking Bob Charland's imaginary house that he doesn't have his name on the deed of, that is not delinquent taxes because it doesn't exist, but so Bob Charland's house, and you take it with the power, you want the power of treasurer's sale that the city has now because of I've forgotten the acronym, changed in the state law. change. The municipal something
Claims and tax
claims
lien
and
law.
tax lien law.
Yeah.
You want, the city couldn't, because of that recent state change in Harrisburg, the city could take Bob Charlin's imaginary delinquent house. But the land bank wants to take Bob Charlin's imaginary delinquent house. And that's the contract.
Yes.
That is being worked out.
Specifically to get the approval to have the back taxes cleared. But yes. Yeah, it's about accessing that private tax delinquent inventory.
So there's a lot more houses out there that belong to people. And we've talked about this before. And so, we don't want you to go take grandma's house that grandma's living in.
Yes, I don't want grandma's
nobody
house.
wants
I
to
don't
do
want
that.
any house that has
Right?
someone living in it.
Yeah,
Yes.
we don't want the land bank to do that. But that there may be other falling down, in addition to the 250 falling down houses that have been owned by the city maybe for a very long time. There may be other empty, blighting neighborhoods, houses that somebody could be living in.
Yeah.
So I just want us to kind of it's so hard to keep these buckets separate that I almost feel like we need to color code posters or something to be we're talking about these set of houses now, we're talking about these set of houses another time. Or vacant properties, right? Because again, we have another 10,000 lots over here in the city bucket that don't have structures on them because we tore them down. Right. At some point over the last 15 years or something like that, thousands and thousands and thousands. And then there's some that we could ethically, kind of morally acquire for the common good so that they can be rehabbed and stabilize that street and also house someone. But very cautiously and judiciously, and we should all be very, very cognizant. We want the population to understand what we're doing.
Yes.
And then, we also do have the vacant lots that could be also in either category. And that is another thing too. And we've debated separately. It really isn't about the land bank, but it is about I think other conversations that council people have had about types of houses that could be built. We have flat packed prefab houses that are being built in the city now. We've talked about the building code. We've talked about tiny houses that don't have to be $2,000 houses. I have constituents who would buy a $200,000 tiny house, right? And that would actually be one of the more affordable houses in my entire city council district because, vacant lots in my city council district are listed for sale right now for over $100,000. And they're tiny, right? They're 20 feet by 100 feet. So this still can add capacity. I mean, just for our council table, right? It's like another tool for added capacity for having more affordable housing because the challenge, again, just as a reminder to the public, everyone at this table, I think, we need to keep these numbers in front of us, costs $500,000 to build an apartment.
Yes.
One.
Exactly.
So, if you're building 10, you're already up to $5 million. Just to 10 apartments. Right, and so we need to look at these land acquisition costs, but we also need to look at the, and that's without any zoning barriers, by the way, right? That's just the construction costs. That's the labor and materials and the commodities prices, the reality of today. So, restoring these houses may be far cheaper than, building new. But we need to look at all of the ways that we can use these powers kind of together with all the other things we need to work out to rebuild the neighborhoods and streets that need to be rebuilt and to provide more housing in the affordability. I'm going to throw in one last thing. It's been a long day. We've all been here a long time. Which is that I think about 2 years ago, maybe 3, I passed a city council resolution, we all voted for it, that asked the URA, but also PLI and some other city departments to report out on collective ownership on limited equity housing co-ops. And we got that report, and the URA did a really good job. And I said, here's the question, right? What what I'm hoping I don't hear back from the URA is that, oh, well, gosh, no, we have these pots of funds for you to buy a house, but that doesn't apply to limited equity collective ownership. And, oh, God, we have this other pot of money, but that's only from multifamily, and that doesn't apply to limited equity housing clubs. And so I wanted to make sure, and I asked this question when we voted on the housing bond, just let's make sure that they don't preclude or exclude or disqualify a project that comes through. And so I'm going to ask the same thing for the land bank, right? And for these pots of funds, right? If you've got 10 lots and the project is like 20 homes that are either owned by a land trust or under a co-op agreement, and here's why, because we have limited equity housing clubs in the city where it costs $40,000 to buy a house. And you can't buy a $40,000 house anywhere else, I don't think. So we need more of that. So I'd like to just take advantage of having the opportunity to say that again. So like with the funding pots, let's make sure that any of the programmatic things that we're doing are also just flexible enough to include a project that's collectively owned. Even though that's maybe, again, for attorneys, like, well, there's not one person name. It's, it's a nonprofit that is this ownership structure or whatever. So I'll let you respond.
Yes.
Yay.
I just want to say, could not agree more with all of the points that you have made, and the issue of, when you lose a house in most of our neighborhoods in Pittsburgh, you can't rebuild it. The market does not support a new construction house, and so you have just removed a unit of housing from the city, from a neighborhood. So I'm always talking about how important it is to preserve what we have. And you often can't rebuild anyway, because it's some weird tiny little lot that you wouldn't build a modern house on. Somebody decided to build something there 100 years ago.
Tiny houses are back, man. I mean, I don't know how many different times I can say that. I have not just $2,000, wooden boxes, but I have constituents who want to downsize
into a small
house, like a legitimately tiny house. Maybe not, a 100 square foot house, but like a several hundred square foot house. And they want to like live with their girlfriends when they retire and stuff. I mean, I think there's room for that here, and it doesn't take up that much space.
Yes. And I will say,
let's not put blocks in that we don't need to.
100%. We would be very, very open to helping to facilitate a sale of a lot to someone who would want to build something like that. We've come close a couple of times now to successfully selling directly to someone looking to build a house. So I'm really looking forward to help remove those barriers. We would absolutely love to
it's like a group of houses, right? I'm not sure exactly. So
yeah, and if there's anyone out there that is interested in figuring out how to purchase or build a limited equity cooperative housing structure, homes, we would absolutely love to to facilitate the sale of the property. We'd be very, very interested and open, especially if someone can figure out how to privately fund the construction or the rehab.
Yeah,
we're here for that. So anybody out there who's listening right now, please call the land bank. We would love to support
at least we're not putting
like that.
barriers in place, and definitely we'll try to see if there's there's a million different ways to do housing, affordable housing. We've just listened to several hours of it, so I won't go on, but I just want to take the opportunity, so I appreciate it. All right, I think, Mr. Chair, that's all I've got. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Any other members have any follow-up?
I just got a couple rapid-fire questions. That's good. Probably prefer it off, wouldn't you? So, first of all, to what Councilwoman Gross just brought up as to the properties out there that people are back on taxes, these are dead-end properties, correct?
Yes.
Okay, right. This is where I need you in District 4,
yes.
right? This is where I need you. Have you tackled any of those yet?
No. I mean, I would say that what has gone into the cities, everything that's
you need the agreement before you take those on, right?
Would be classified as dead end, because anything that before the land bank and anything that we have requested through Treasurer's Sale in the last 2 years has all been dead end vacant and abandoned, and we actually built a map for the CDCs to help them see where those dead-end properties are. So we're using many factors to determine that someone has truly walked away. A simple way to solve that is if you respond to the PLI violation. If we know there is an owner, then that would negate something being classified as appropriate to acquire.
Okay, we've talked about dead-end properties. That's to get those back on a tax roll, make them affordable. That would be fantastic. I think I have more of those than I have anything. I don't think I don't really have a lot of structures falling to pieces. But so I'm to assume you target homes, the 250 or so that we have. You target ones that are salvageable, that you feel are salvageable. You're not going to. Right? Is that
Like
how you start? Because you got to catch them before they become unsalvageable.
Right. We're trying
Who makes that assessment for you?
I
nonprofits?
have many partners. It depends on the project. The nonprofits who have experience doing that rehab work are coming on the walkthrough. There's 2 engineers on staff at the URA and an architect, and so they've come to walk through properties. And then Pittsburgh Housing Development Corporation has a lot of expertise. I mean, they're doing that work all the time.
So you have somebody qualified to say, yes, we could save this. No, we can't.
Yes.
I love the pictures of a place that's cleaned out and stabilized versus a place that you have a before and after. I couldn't agree with you more. To assess something like that, or if somebody's going to look at purchasing something like that, you can't bring them in with a furniture-filled house.
Right.
They need to see the walls, they need to see the floors, they need to see everything. And that's where part of the $40,000 per unit goes into that, right?
Exactly. Scoping the sewer.
Right.
Really making sure we're naming all those costs.
Sure.
So someone's prepared to be successful with their rehab.
Right.
And Councilman, if I could, to just really put a really fine point on this issue of the need, where it's really appropriate sometimes to foreclose on privately owned housing, is we also get periodic calls at the land bank and the URA and city from people who thought the bank had foreclosed on their property. They walked away 10 years ago because they thought the bank foreclosed or whatever was going on in their life, they could not take that property on anymore, and they walk away and they have no idea they still own that property until 10 years later. They're getting a citation from PLI because the property's gotten so bad, the neighbors have started complaining, and they're totally stuck. The house is in super bad shape, and it's affecting the neighbor's ability to keep their homeowner's insurance. So not only if you're bringing the value down, you're putting those other property owners at risk of losing their own property because that giant tree in the backyard is only going to get bigger and increase that risk of falling. And so I've seen a couple of those so far, and we haven't been able to take them on yet because, they're really just teardowns. And so we can't take that hit.
Well, why would you?
People they're expecting that this house is going to get foreclosed on. They're surprised to learn they even own it, and we're totally stuck. There is nothing anyone can do other than wait for you to hit your lucky day of finally making it onto the demolition list. And even then, the problem's not solved because the property is still sitting tax delinquent. It has to be foreclosed on to then be repurposed.
So I've told you in the past, I've went after a couple dead-end properties. For me, I didn't know who owned it, but we did the research. I hired an attorney. How do you know where the dead-end properties are or not? For me, it was just, I had to hire an attorney. And then he told me who owns it and how much they're back on taxes, and then it triggered sheriff's sale.
So my years of working at PLI have been a huge asset to working in this current role. And the way that their dead-end process works is they'll put a property through the typical citation process. Sometimes it'll go through 2 or 3 rounds, and no one responds to the violation. Right. Nobody shows up in court. And then they do additional research to try and find a better address. Most of the time, they're finding that owner is deceased.
Yeah, no heirs. I know that's what I have plenty of. I believe.
Yes, and so at that point, they mark it dead end. What they use it for is to be able to expedite that property to the clean and lean through the clean and lean process. They need to be able to more quickly get the grass cut and get the property reboarded, because it would take, you'd have to go through another 5-month citation process to reboard something. Right. So that's what they use it for. But what it tells us is somebody is calling the city and asking for help. hey, I'm living next to a dilapidated, abandoned property.
Right.
Can somebody fix this?
Right, and then somebody has to do the research, though.
Yes.
But you don't do that at this time.
So we would use that as a starting point,
Okay.
and then we pull a title report on everything that we acquire. So we would do all that work up front, because we also need to know what kind of back taxes are on it, what kind of liens and encumbrances. So we would do additional research. That's kind of like the first red flag.
So on that note, you do not have the co-op agreement with the 3 taxing bodies as of yet to clear those back taxes.
Right.
You're close to that.
We're close,
Okay,
yes.
so there is no going after dead-end properties until you clear that, right?
Right.
Okay, I look forward to that, and then we'll get you in the 4th district when that occurs, I
Yes.
believe. Didn't I remember you last time we were at the table saying, don't you have some sort of clause where if you bring it to the sheriff's sale, you're the only bidder?
Right. Yes, it's called priority bid.
Right. Is that how you got the Teeny? I'm sorry, what's Teeny's last name?
Teeny Harris.
Teeny Harris. Yeah, right. Is that how you got the Teeny Harris? Because that's $26,000. Is
Yeah. Oh no. We were.
Oh, so you had other bidders.
We were a bidder just
Okay.
like anyone else.
Okay, so that did not fall in
Yes,
that category.
It did. It was
Okay.
not our exercising our priority bid.
Got it.
In this case, and because it was a bank that initiated the sale, we would never, or a lender, we can't intervene at that point. We would have to beat the lender to filing the foreclosure. Which I will say that most of what we require has old mortgages. There are old unsatisfied unpaid mortgages that are like 10, 15, 20 years old that the banks, they could have foreclosed 10 years ago.
So you've not
And they
brought any homes to the sheriff's sale where you're the sole bidder?
Yeah, we have not done that yet.
Okay, and when you do, you're going to bid for $1. Is that right? How's that work?
Well, we pay the cost of the
The
sale.
upset cost.
So it's going to range. It'll be between $2,500 to $4,500,
Oh, okay.
and that's all. It's like how many pieces of paper did the sheriff's office have to print out to
gotcha.
provide
So
notice?
you're basically paying for clerical
Exactly.
work and okay.
Yep.
All right. That's great. That's it. That's it for me, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Councilman. And I think we're going from the bottom of the 9th into extra innings with my good friend from District 1. I think you had another comment or a question.
It's actually amazing how many. I was going to say one last thing here, and he.
Yeah, great mind.
I mean, I don't understand. I don't understand what's going on here. We drank the same iced tea at lunchtime, I guess. I was just going to say that we have the power to go to sheriff's sale now. It's just everything you just laid out. So, but one clarification is just like that's everything that's in this agreement. Like we already have those powers. It's just, it's a matter of those fine details of big details, what the price will be for sheriff's sale. How much revenue we would get from the taxes. How much, will the school, county, will the liens be forgiven zero? Will they not be? We won't get the bill for it. All those little details, but yeah, I mean, we're not going to call a sheriff's sale. And we all do we currently have the power to call a sheriff's sale right now?
We could.
I mean, not call it, but
We could request to buy things.
Yeah, so we do that, but
for
it's like, why
sheriff's
would
sale.
we until we have all this lined out?
Yeah,
I
but
was
there's no clearing of
Yeah.
back taxes essentially.
Right.
So there's
Right,
no,
because we don't have all those
set.
details lined up. So it's like, what's the point of being in right of first refusal if we don't have all that stuff lined up? So
Exactly.
Thanks.
Great question.
Yeah, man. Great minds.
Any other questions? I don't have any questions. I think all my questions were answered. As well as a board member, I get education on a monthly basis, and then even in our in-between conversations. So I just want to thank you again for your leadership, not only on the Teeny Harris house acquisition, but throughout this year. And I'd like to hope that me joining the board helped out. In some ways, maybe I'm the Russell Wilson of the land bank. Change the fortunes of the team. I'm just pulling some jokes from the Bobby Wilson.
Yeah, I laughed at his joke, by the way. I was watching in my
Right.
office when you joked.
Yeah, right. You're crushing it.
I'm
out of the ballpark.
Yeah, this is just one joke from the multi-volume encyclopedia of jokes by Councilman Bobby Wilson. that I pulled from. But all jokes aside, just thank you so much, and want to wish you a happy holiday season. And I'll see you, I guess, next Friday at
That's right.
at our monthly board meeting. And
1 o'clock, live streamed on City Channel if anyone wants to tune in.
Absolutely. So thanks so much. I want to thank all my members, and as always, Director McDevitt holding it down as usual. So thanks everyone who tuned in on the City Channel as well. And I think this is my last hearing of the year. So we'll see you next December, but continue to stay tuned throughout the week for more hearings. So thanks everyone. And motion to recess.
Motion to recess.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We are.